Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider presented by FanDuel. Matthew Coller here, and tonight we've got some news to get to, and also I want a specific type of question from you guys. There's a game that we like to play on the show that I haven't played in a while, and I got an email reminding me of it. Talk me into. So that's what we're going to do a little bit later. But first, want to dive right into a couple of Minnesota Vikings news items, starting with Brian O'Neill. Now, this is something that we've talked about quite a bit on the show, is will the Vikings re-sign Brian O'Neill to an extension? And my take on this has been, it's a pretty good idea to have Brian O'Neill on your football team. And offensive tackles can be very good into their 30s, routinely are actually really good into their 30s, especially if they are great athletes. Look at Lane Johnson, for example, Trent Williams. There's many, many others who have been good into their 30s. Brian O'Neill is in his 30s, but it's not like he's 36, 37 years old. So, okay, look, if Nolan Teasley really wanted to say, I'm not extending anybody, everybody's got to earn their keep because Teasley's in town, all right. I mean, I guess I would understand if you wouldn't want to commit a lot of money, but at the same time, if I was in the GM seat, I would also be saying, wait, do I want to spend a first-round draft pick next year on an offensive tackle? Because if not, then I think I want to keep Brian O'Neill around. You cannot find them in free agency, and you almost always have to draft them in the first round, maybe the second round, like where they got Brian O'Neill, but it's the first two rounds, and that is a almost guarantee. There are very few tackles that ever make it that are not drafted super high. Every once in a while, there's an outlier like a Zach Tom or something, but most of the time, if you want a good tackle, you better get them high. So would I want to do that, or would I rather just stick with the guy that is one of the best leaders in the locker room, a guy that the ownership of the team would love to have on the Ring of Honor, right? Like, I think that you probably want to go with that. And even if there are concerns with him being banged up, well, you know, it was 2024. He played the entire season. Last year, he played most of the year. He's proven to be able to fight through injuries and still perform at a very high level, consistently a top 20 offensive tackle in the NFL over his career. So there's a good argument for re-signing Brian O'Neill. And according to ESPN's Kevin Seifert, it seems like, I don't want to quite use the word imminent, but it sort of seems like it is right around the corner for Mr. O'Neill. So here is what Seifert wrote on ESPN.com. He wrote, O'Neill remains the type of player that all good teams build around. He is a two-time Pro Bowler and a reliable presence on the offensive line that has had its share of upheaval during his tenure. He has never played fewer than 14 games in a season. Coach Kevin O'Connell has reportedly referenced his reliance on O'Neill as a leader, and there is near universal agreement within the organization that it should pursue a contract extension. The terms and duration merit debate as the Vikings signed an intriguing tackle in restricted free agency, Ryan Vandermark, and also used a third-round pick on Northwestern tackle Caleb Tiernan. So let's pick that apart a little bit because I've got a proposal based on other right tackles coming in a second. But when it comes to Kevin O'Connell, I mean, I think every coach in the NFL would say, I have a top 20 offensive tackle. Yes, that make sure we keep that person, because we've seen this where the Vikings have gone at offensive tackle in the past when things weren't working out or they missed on a draft pick. That would be Mike Remmers for an entire season at right tackle. They once tried Rashad Hill for quite a while. They had at left tackle, Riley Reif was pretty reliable before Christian Darrisaw showed up, but before him, it was TJ Clemmings. I mean, the offensive tackle position, it's been really solidified for quite a long time for the Vikings because of Brian O'Neill since 2018, that I think we take for granted. Like, oh yeah, well, you know, he's just offensive tackle. He's good. It's fine. We can find those anywhere. Absolutely not. You absolutely cannot find Brian O'Neill's just kicking around. And the fact that he still played at a very high level last year, despite being banged up a little at times, but as Seifert mentions, he's always played at least 14 games. The minimum amount of snaps that you're going to get for Brian O'Neill, even aside from, a catastrophic injury. And this was a guy who went through an Achilles injury and came back at the beginning of the following season and still ended up playing very well for the Vikings. So he has really proven that he can battle through stuff. The second part of that, the terms and duration debate we'll get into, but Ryan Vandemark and Caleb Tiernan. I mean, I look at someone like Vandemark as a classic swing tackle that stays in the NFL for like 12 years, and probably gets a couple of seasons where he gets starting opportunities here or there, but that's more of his profile. Not a top draft pick, very good athletically in terms of his size and his power, but maybe not when it comes to the footwork and consistency of a starting offensive tackle. So I've never really looked at him as someone who had starting potential, not here, probably for a team in a pinch at some point, but much more as a quality swing tackle. And Tiernan, when you look at his build, offensive tackle is very possible with his footwork. He's got the footwork of an offensive tackle. He's got the athleticism of an offensive tackle. But what he doesn't have is the arm length. Caleb Tiernan has my arms. They're just normal person arms for some reason. I have no idea why this happens, that a 6'6" or 6'7" guy can come out with normal guy arms. I don't get it. Like, ask God, I guess. But he might be fit to be an offensive guard. And I think if you really love what you see from Tiernan, that you could, because of his build, because of his footwork, because of his athleticism, slide him into guard. And Will Fry's situation is really up in the air in the future. And this was something that happened with Ezra Cleveland, and the Vikings unfortunately made a mistake in bailing on Ezra Cleveland too soon. He eventually became a really good guard for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he had his ups and downs, and there was, a development curve for him. But they had drafted him in the second round, and he became a longtime starting guard in the NFL. And the same thing might be able to happen for Caleb Tiernan. And in the worst case scenario, you have depth on the offensive line. Imagine it. I mean, I have come to the opinion after looking at this closer and how many teams have injuries across their offensive lines year to year, and how rare it is for a team to have all of their guys stay healthy for an entire season. I've come to the conclusion that you got to have 8. You got to have 8 starting caliber offensive linemen if you're going to survive an entire NFL season, or you better have megastars up there to where you can make up for any losses in the front line. But I mean, think about how many guys they had to play last year. Think about the fact that they had to bench Ed Ingram and play Dalton Reisner. They lost Christian Darrisaw in 2024, and that was a relatively healthy year compared to last year. So right now, I'd say that they have 6. Maybe Tiernan could be 7, and then we'll see about the other interior offensive linemen if they think that Michael Juergens could play multiple positions as a backup, or if we see Walter Rouse as somebody that becomes a reliable guard, kind of like Blake Brandel did, if he's on that same sort of plan. And Henry Bird is a guy who's been developing for years. We haven't seen him actually get into a game, but he's someone that they've been developing behind the scenes. But I think to get through an entire season, 17 games, the way that defensive lines are so physical and fast and aggressive, these guys get hurt enough to need that many players. So getting Vandemark and Tiernan is great depth. Tiernan, maybe a potential, think about this, like imagine a situation for Tiernan, like best case is you sign O'Neal to an extension, Tiernan becomes a good guard for you and starts after this year at right guard because Will Fry's contract is really set up to move on from him after this year. And then Brian O'Neal plays a couple more years, retires, and Tiernan has made a good impression on you. You kick him out to tackle, right? I mean, you could see things like this happening. Or if Tiernan becomes a really good guard, you draft one down the road. But if I'm Nolan Teasley, I want to spend next year's draft pick on if I have to, with a quarterback. I want to make sure that all the other key positions that need drafting are taken care of so I can focus on quarterback potentially, or spend it on something else that could have a huge impact, like a cornerback, or maybe another edge rusher. I think another edge rusher is really in the cards for next year, because even if Dallas Turner is good, if you move on from Andrew Van Ginkel, even if you keep Andrew Van Ginkel, like another edge rusher to replace Jonathan Grenard could be very important. So I attempted to come up with some terms for Brian O'Neill for an extension. So I was looking at a couple of the top right tackles. Now, I didn't look at Tristan Wirfs or Penei Sewell because those guys are really young, coming off of their rookie contracts. So they were bound to sign, huge mega deals. Plus, the long-term for both of them, the long-term plan was always to move them to left tackle. So they got paid with a little bit of extra there, and both are over at left tackle now. So I didn't think that Sewell and Wirfs were really great comps for Brian O'Neill. I tried to look at players who were a little bit on the older side. So here's what I came up with. Tyler Moton of the Carolina Panthers recently signed a 2-year, $44 million contract with $37 million guaranteed. So he is also in his 30s. He's been similarly really, really good, and maybe not a megastar tackle, but an excellent, very, very solid right tackle. And that's what he got. So that would be the shorter term with a ton of guaranteed money. That's about $22 million per year, but almost all of it is guaranteed. So you could go that route if you're the Vikings with Brian O'Neill, is say, hey, like we're only going to go 2 years, but we are going to, give you almost all of it guaranteed. Similar contract for Titus Howard with the Cleveland Browns. He signed a 2-year extension for $22.5 million and 34 guaranteed. So almost the same exact contract, 22.5. And then Zach Tom, who's a little younger, but also a very good player. Same deal at $22 million per year. Now, he signed a longer contract, but it actually has less guaranteed money. So he signed for $88 million, but only 30 of that is guaranteed. So essentially, when you sign a contract like that, it's more of a 2-year deal than it is a 4-year contract. So here's my proposal for Brian O'Neill, because these contracts were signed previously. If you're doing it this year, the prices go up because the cap goes up. And so every contract is going to be a little bit higher than the next one that's a comparable that's been signed, last year or something, right? So this is for, and I do think Howard's was this year, but I also think that O'Neill is better than Titus Howard. So here's my proposal. 3 years, $78 million, which works out to $26 million per year, with $40 million guaranteed for Brian O'Neill, which essentially would turn out to be more of a 2-year, $40 million deal if that's the guaranteed money. And then you have that 3rd year, which gives you a little flexibility to renegotiate or keep him on your roster if he's planning for 1 more year and then wants to retire. Whatever it is that you want to do, 3 years, $78 million. And Brian, I believe, is 31. So that would take him to age 34 after a 3-year extension, including this year. So you put it on top of this year and you've got your right tackle. And maybe that gives you a little more flexibility with the cap hits to kind of push it out into the future a little bit more. But I think that he's worth a little more than these other offensive tackles because he truly is one of the best right tackles in the league. And if you're at 26 there, Christian Darrisaw is close to 35. That's a lot of money in tackle, but you know what? Offensive tackle, pretty damn important. So as we've seen for when one of these guys isn't in there, offensive tackle is a pretty big deal. If you're going to spend your money, then you should probably do it there. So comment section, reaction. What do you think? Do you guys think that that is a good proposal? Would you prefer less? Would you prefer them move on from Brian O'Neill? I don't think that this one is particularly controversial, and I can't really come up with any argument. I mean, yes, you always want to get younger as a roster. Everyone in the world wants to get younger. But I was talking about this a little bit last night, and I started thinking about it more with Brian O'Neill, is if a roster turns over every couple of years, like think about O'Neill in his career, gets here in 2018, sees a roster turnover of a lot of the guys who were on the 17 team leave, then 2022 into 2023, there's another roster turnover there, right? So it really is every couple of seasons. And this would keep Brian O'Neill here through the next roster turnover because after this year, there will be changes. I don't know that they're going to blow it all up and send everybody packing, but they're almost guaranteed to see changes. If Hawkinson goes, Van Ginkel, Aaron Jones, like that's a big part of their leadership group. And I think if you are going to a younger team, you also have to have players in that locker room who are also really good at football. I mean, Brian O'Neill is really good at football. So if you're talking about having a younger team, though, I think leadership becomes even more important. They will probably, if they don't love Blake Brandel at center, they might draft a young center at some point. That's good to have. If Tiernan ultimately comes into right guard, that's really good to have Brian O'Neill there. And the fewer offensive line positions that you're chasing, the better. So that is how I look at that. We have an update on the front office about Ryan Grigson. A lot of you have asked about Ryan Grigson, and Neil Stratton, whose Twitter handle is Inside the League, reported this earlier, said Ryan Grigson no longer appears on the Vikings website. We're told that he is leaving his post as assistant general manager in Minnesota for a new opportunity, working to confirm his next stop. And Kevin Seifert, quote tweeted it and said, Ryan Grigson was given an opportunity to remain on new Vikings general manager Nolan Teasley's staff with a different title, as previously reported. As Neil said, Grigson has in fact decided to depart and pursue a new job with another team. So I really don't get this sometimes. I think things sometimes are just sort of internet inventions that, there were people kind of like celebrating Ryan Grigson leaving as if you have any idea what Ryan Grigson did for the Minnesota Vikings the last few years. Look, just because someone's tenure as a general manager did not go the way that they wanted it to go, and I know that he is singularly pinned with ruining Andrew Luck's career and so forth, which I also think is a little aggressive. Now, did they fail to build great offensive lines? Yes, but I think we also know that Andrew Luck and the system he was playing in, how long he held on to the football, like we have data to show that life was made harder on those offensive linemen by the way that they played football and by Andrew Luck. So it's not just one person and yes, there was the trade for the running back and that didn't go well for Ryan Grigson. They did win a lot of games in Indianapolis with him as the GM, but I get it. I understand that his tenure as a GM did not go perfectly, but this is somebody who has a lifelong history in football and as a scout, has been with many really good organizations, has been with the Eagles, had been with the Seahawks, was offered a spot by Nolan Teasley. They knew each other from Seattle, so you could see why he was here. And also, if you want to point to one thing that I know he was responsible for, that would be Jalen Redmond. Ryan Grigson was a huge fan of Jalen Redmond in the UFL, and he actually brought Redmond to Brian Flores. And what Brian Flores told him was, are we really doing this? Like, are you serious? Do you really want me to look at this UFL player? And now Redmond's one of the best players on the team. So on a day-to-day basis, people like assistant GMs and things like that, we don't know the conversations that are had, the work that is done, what positions and parts of the organization they're handling. Like, they don't announce all that stuff to us. So I thought that some of the celebration and critiquing was a little bit unfair, but I think we can say that Nolan Teasley, whether it's by, someone leaving on their own like this, or whether they've decided to just move on from some people, has really made this thing his front office. And the Kwesi and the Rick, there's a lot of people from that era who are still here in Minnesota, but there's also a lot of new faces in the front office, which overall I think is a good thing, like unequivocally a good thing to bring in some people from Seattle, some people from around the league, people that Nolan Teasley trusts as part of the front office. But I just don't really understand the celebrating with Ryan Grigson. This team made a lot of great pro moves to get free agents and stuff. Well, Ryan Grigson was around. There were a lot of people that they brought in on the pro side. Now, the drafting was not good, of course. We know that. And I don't know how much involvement there was on certain decisions, but at least when it came to free agents and stuff, the Vikings built some really good rosters with free agents. And it's hard for me to believe that even like last year, they wouldn't have been a really good team had they gotten better quarterback play. So it's not like the whole time Grigson was here, he just destroyed the franchise as the AGM, and I don't know. So it's a little bit strange to me, but the offense or the front office overhaul has essentially continued. So here's what I want from you guys today. Here's what I want from the chat. That's the news items I got, and I have some predictions to throw out there, and I also have this thing that was shown to me by Jonathan Harrison, producer of the show, that is called Build a Player, and I want us to play with it together. later because we're live streaming in June. And whenever anybody finds something, this is just a blanket statement. If you find something cool on the internet that you think would be fun for the show, like shoot me an email. It's just my name at Gmail. Shoot me an email and I would love to see it. And I would love to toy around with it on the show. So this thing, we're going to mess with a little bit later, but here's what I want from the chat. Here's what I want from you guys today. I want you to start thinking right now, start throwing into the chat right now, things for me to talk you into. So they don't have to necessarily be things I believe, just Vikings or NFL related stuff. Talk me into. I never play this game with you guys. And I realized when I got this email from somebody who had a really good idea, Robert, appreciate him emailing, sent in and said, hey, you know, next time you're on with Dane, like you guys should play a little talk me into game and stuff and so forth. And I thought, you know, what would be fun because we've had some really good chats recently is if we play a game of talk me into with the chat. So talk me into blank, talk me into the Vikings winning the Super Bowl, talk me into whatever it might be. Max Brosmer winning 5 games, whatever is on your mind. It could be ridiculous. It could be super serious. Go ahead. Talk me into, finish the sentence. So I'm going to read your stuff now. And if you also have thoughts on Brian O'Neill, an extension, if you think I'm offering him too much money, like let me know there as well. So let's jump in. Let's see what you guys have on your mind. Hold on one sec. And there it is. Okay. All right. So Joker says, I would very much prefer to never see Brian O'Neill play for another team. I know. I mean, Brian O'Neill, we were talking about this last night, just about how, you know, players sometimes get treated too much as commodities, even by the fans now. And I love the fact that all of you guys have so much access to front office stuff like the overthecap.com or, you know, any of these team building, sticktothemodel.com, which is something where you can build teams. I mean, that's great. I'm a nut for that stuff. I simulated, you know, seasons on Madden to the next year to build the team and then simulated again to see how the team went. And you know, I did all that stuff too. But sometimes you have to like pull back a little bit and stop being so much into, hey, get rid of players and draft more players. And remember, like never wanting to pay anyone. Well, there is a salary cap. You can pay people. But also, like some guys are really important to the franchise. And I think that Brian O'Neill is really important to the franchise. C.W. Herbert says 3 years, that's really only 2. Yeah, that's the way I would go with it. I would go with 3 years, that's really only 2. And if it's more than that, it's just really hard to do. Like once a player reaches their 30s, 3 years is about as far out as you really want to look because you never know when that regression could be around the corner. And a player like Brian O'Neill, the position, the lack of an injury history, hasn't had too many serious injuries. It's, you know, a foot or an ankle there. You know, he did have the Achilles thing, but came back from that, played really, really well. So, you know, the fact that he doesn't have an injury history that's very robust and really wins with his athleticism, I think that when players don't age well, a lot of times what happens is that someone had to win with technique, but maybe weren't the best athlete. So if you have someone that, let's say somebody that runs like a 4.6 or something, and they're just barely fast enough to be a wide receiver in the NFL, then if the minute that they lose that speed and they're basically a 4.8 player, like you better be Larry Fitzgerald if you're going to have that happen, or Anquan Bolden. But most guys, they'll just sort of be out of the league at that point. If Brian O'Neill only has 85% of the athleticism that he had when he came in the league, well, he's still a top-notch athlete because he came into the league at like a 99th percentile athlete for that position. And then he's got all the technical stuff, the grown man strength to go along with it. But, you know, 3 years I think is about as far as you can go. And if you're talking about a 2-year extension, essentially on top of this, 2026, 2027, 2028, and then you've kind of got another decision to make in after 2028. So that's quite a long time down the road to have Brian O'Neill, but it takes you through the next rebuild. That's kind of the way I would look at it. Joker says the only scenario where we shouldn't extend O'Neill is a full tank, which will never happen. If he's not on the team, then you likely have to spend a high pick on a tackle, and that complicates a rebuild. 100%. 100%. If you have to, if you need to replace tackle, unless you really think Ryan Vandemark or Caleb Tiernan is ready. And Tiernan is on the edge. I mean, a third-round pick, it's possible that that player becomes a starter. It's unlikely that that player becomes an above-average starter. So maybe, yeah, you could potentially, get that guy there to a point where you could survive. I think it's preferable that Tiernan just becomes a guard next year and is a starter and uses his athleticism and pass protection skill to give you something there that may be better than Will Fries potentially. Because Fries is actually one of those guys that I was kind of describing. Fries is mentality, super high IQ guy, but from an athleticism standpoint, like there's a reason why he was a low draft pick. I think 7th rounder, right? Or was he undrafted? I think he was a 7th rounder. Whatever it was for Will Fries. I mean, that you're just barely hanging on at that point. Like you got to maximize everything. And Fries has done that and is a good player in the league. But Tiernan is much more of a natural athlete who, scored really, really well across in the athletic measures. And then when you watch him play in the Big Ten, a tough conference, you see it, but probably just doesn't have the arm length to go to battle with a lot of the top edge rushers in the NFL, a lot of whom are now rushing over the right side the offense's right side. So it's hard to replace that position. And you're right that even if they're not tanking, they are going to build. Even if you don't call it rebuilding and just call it building, they're going to build. And do you want to have to spend a 1st or 2nd round pick on right tackle when you could kick that decision down the road by keeping O'Neal? And then you could spend it on edge rusher. You could spend it on shutdown corner. You could spend it on quarterback if you need. This is a guy who's coming from a team that spent a 2nd round pick on Ken Walker. I mean, they haven't had a great running back in a long time. And if you look at the great running backs in the league, you do usually have to draft them in the 1st or 2nd round. Not all, and you can find a lot of running backs. But I mean, if you want to have like a Bijan Robinson or a Jonathan Taylor, those are 1st and 2nd round draft picks. So you're just sort of foregoing some either luxury pick or some other, position of need because you decided that you wanted to save money. It's, you know what it is? It's like the penny wise, pound foolish. Like that's what it feels like if you were going to let go Brian O'Neal. I'm sure that there is a number where it's like, okay, we just can't do it, bro. We can't give you like $34 million to be a right tackle. But I think when we look at those comparables, I don't think you can get to 30 if you're O'Neal's side. I don't think you can make that case. I think 25 ballpark, I went 26, is probably the right range for him. And I'm sure if you're O'Neal, you want a 5-year contract. Doesn't really make sense from a team perspective to go that far into the future. The Vikings have gone 4 years with some extensions, but you could also kind of call it a 4-year if you're talking, well, it's this year, you're already on your deal. Now that also depends too. When they do the years for an extension, are we redoing this year and then 2 more, or is it this year and then 2 more tacked on? I think for O'Neal, what you'd want to do is in some way that restructured this year. That's probably a good way to do it, is restructuring this year so you can lower that cap hit, have more flexibility to sign, I don't know, Jadeveon Clowney, I guess, or to make a move at the trade deadline. So lower that cap hit for this year and then 3 years on top of that. Would they call it a 4-year? I don't know if they would call that a 4-year or not. I actually don't know. This is something we always have to ask when there's an extension. Like, wait, is this on top of this year or is this counting this year? But in my scenario, that would be counting. I think, I guess in my scenario, I'd want it to count this year. I'd want it to be 2026, 2027, and 2028. Or maybe I would want it on top. It's a good question for me. I'm the one that came up with it. Steelhead says, talk me out of Kyler Murray having a career resurgence under KOC's system. Okay, if that does not happen, it will not happen for a couple of reasons. Number one would be that Kyler Murray, well, doesn't stay healthy is always a potential reason, but the reasons would be, number one, that he does not really lock into the offense at any point. Like, yeah, sure, he can run it, but he's not running it the way that Kevin O'Connell really wants him to run it, and you're getting maybe some headbutting between the two. Kyler is not really seeing the field that great in this offense and is scrambling way too much. And I think the biggest thing in terms of a resurgence versus what he most recently was is that there's always been ups and downs with Kyler Murray. But here's the thing about Kyler Murray. Like, if it's not a resurgence and it's just what he's been the average of his healthy years, that is good enough to get you to the playoffs. it might not be good enough to sign him to a multi-year contract extension. But if he's the same exact quarterback he was in 2024, you're in the postseason more likely than not. So it's not really a resurgence if he's just the 12th to 15th best quarterback in the league, which is where he has lived during his career. Then I wouldn't call it that. I would say that Kyler Murray was just Kyler Murray. And I think that that's a fairly likely scenario, that he just is who he is. And the thing about Murray is that he has kryptonites. He has things that are problematic for him, as most quarterbacks do, that are somewhere between 12th and 15th, right? I guess Jordan Love's probably better than that. Who's a good quarterback that's like 12th best? Is like Bo Nix or something. Like Bo Nix, his kryptonite is that he's not super accurate. He is good under 10 yards and he can throw some bombs and he can scramble. But if you ask him to drop back time and time again and hit 15-yard dig routes on the money, like that's going to be hard for him. And Murray is the same kind of range of quarterback where it's not easy for him to face a lot of pressure that is up the middle and in his face, right? If he's not scrambling, he can't really stand in the pocket and fire with somebody coming down the barrel at him. Like that's what Sam Darnold did so well. That is not what Kyler Murray's going to do very well. He, I think, uses the middle of the field more than people think, but it's not like you can really live there if you're Kyler Murray, right? And the biggest thing is that his numbers against pressure are so all over the place that some days it works crazy good. That 2024 game against the Rams, go watch it. Oh my God. It is one of the most insane performances by a quarterback that you're ever going to see when you know how good that Rams defense, that defensive line is. And he goes nuts. I think he had like a perfect quarterback rating or something. He goes absolutely nuts. But then it's not too long after that in the 2024 season, he faces Seattle and he just can't deal with it because of the pressure. So on a week-to-week basis, the ups and downs may just be a feature and not a bug. Kind of the way that KOC, I think, smoothed out some of that with Kirk Cousins, but even then we still got like a Kirktober, right? Where it was not so great. And then, wow, Kirk's on fire. If he continues to be that up and down player on a week to week basis, you're either walking out of US Bank Stadium saying that was the craziest, amazing performance I've ever seen, or what the heck was that? I don't even know what that was. Like that happens a lot. And I had a FanDuel question of the day that I asked, I think I asked this the other day, but I was going to look at this again. I was going to look at quarterbacks, yardage totals. That they don't have one for Kyler Murray yet on FanDuel, but I wanted to know if you guys thought that he would end up with more or less yards than what they are predicting for Caleb Williams. So here is the over-under for Caleb Williams. This is your FanDuel question of the day. Caleb Williams over-under is 3,757.5 yards. Will Kyler Murray end up with more or less yards than what the projection for Caleb Williams is, which is 3,575? And if you're curious, Jordan Love is at 3,525. So will he get to 3,600? Will he outperform the expectations on FanDuel for Jordan Love or Caleb Williams? That is the FanDuel question of the day. Okay, back to your comments. I do know that the what the Norway team does, the Skull Chant, I think the Vikings kind of took that, and now a lot of teams are doing it. But I haven't really watched World Cup. I'm excited to see where the USA goes. I just can't say that I've gotten into all the preliminary rounds and have watched a whole lot of it. Nothing against soccer at all on my part. I just don't really watch a ton of soccer generally. I was watching last night, 2009 Arizona Cardinals versus Indianapolis Colts. That's kind of usually my viewing. Anyway, Joker says the bigger question is how much cap space will it create for this year? Sure seems like it could be a lot, enough to bring in more players for an enigmatic last dance all-in season. Yeah, I know, Joker, that has been your plan, that you have wanted the Vikings to go all in this entire time. You wanted them to trade for Dexter Lawrence. You want them to go get Jadeveon Clowney, make every play they possibly could. But I think that, Joker, we would be in agreement that if they create cap space by doing this, which is probably what they would be doing, they would set it up to create cap space and, maybe 3 or 4 year deal. And that would allow them for a move at the trade deadline. And with the fact that the NFL has so much more movement than it ever has, with the fact that they have moved back the trade deadline over the last couple of years, I think you could pretty safely say that if you want to make a franchise shifting move at the trade deadline, these days you probably can. If you feel like, hey man, we got the goods, we're 6-2, we're a great team, we need to go trade for the top pass rusher out there, we need to go trade for the top running back out there, that's the position I think they could go for. Is like Jordan Mason, I think, is really good, and Aaron Jones as a 1B can be really good in this with this team. But I mean, I don't know how much you can rely on Damon Claiborne, Xavier Scott, like those guys to take on bigger roles. So if you got to 6-2 and you're winning the division and you feel like Kyler's playing great, but the one issue you feel like you have is that you don't have a good enough running game, there will be some teams that have good running backs that are bad teams that might be looking to make a trade there. So yes, I think that will be part of it. I don't know how much in my proposed deal you're saving in cap space, but you could always structure it to push it out into the future as they usually do and set it up for someday you're either restructuring that deal or, maybe someday you are going to take on some dead cap hit from Brian O'Neill, but that's, several years down the road in the future. But I agree, if you're doing it, that could be one of the fringe benefits of doing it. Drew Samia. Who drafted Drew Samia? Wasn't that Rick Spielman? Yeah, that was definitely Rick Spielman who drafted Drew Samia. I don't know why you just said Drew Samia, but that was not good. That was not good. Bruno says, when your other options are only intriguing, I say keep Brian O'Neill. Right, and we've seen a little Ryan Vandermark. He's played a little in the NFL, and he's done well for the Buffalo Bills. And if you had to put him in the game, you would feel really good about it. Like, okay, he's got to play 2 weeks. Fine, perfect. This is the guy to play for 2 weeks. He's done it before. He's a big dude. He's in his prime. Okay. Like with Justin School, it never felt like 2 weeks was going to be fine. Or David Quessenberry, like 2 weeks was going to be fine. This will be. But can he be a starter over 17 games? I think you'd have to see a lot more evidence of that. And it is fair to judge guys by their draft status and their athletic scores when you're talking about that position. Not everybody. Every once in a while, you get a Mitchell Schwartz or something who is not a great athlete and turned out to be a great tackle. But those are outliers. Most of the time, you really do have to be that. Joker says, did you watch Nolan Teasley's interview with Tatum Everett where he mentioned believing in winning through the trenches? Yes. Yeah, I did. And, I always say, Tatum does such a great job over with Vikings Entertainment where those interviews are actually worth watching. Like, I don't know if that's always the case on every team website, but she definitely makes it worth the while when she does interviews with the brass. And yeah, no, I mean, look, I don't know that there's a GM in the world who would say, you know what, actually, we think it's fine if your offensive and defensive lines suck. I don't think anyone would ever say that. But there is a money where your mouth is situation where the Seattle Seahawks, now for years they were criticized for their offensive line, but then they got serious. They drafted Charles Cross. They drafted Gray Zabel. They developed Jake Sundell. Is that right? Jalen? Everyone's named Jalen. Is it Jake Sundell? Their center. But they developed their center and they brought in players through the draft to rebuild that thing. And it turned out to be, an excellent, Abraham Lucas was another guy. So it ended up being an excellent offensive line. And then with the defensive line, they invested so much there. That's Byron Murphy. That's Leonard Williams. That's Boye Mafe was another draft pick for them. All of them athletic freaks, all of them very productive in college. I think that the defensive line right now, it is an arms race in the NFL to build your D-line. And that's why when people are really down on drafting Caleb Banks, like, yeah, from an analytical perspective, there's red flags there for me and for, you guys who have seen them draft injured players before and have it go sideways. There's red flags there for you. But also, this guy checks the box of being a scary freak. And defensive line, man, you got to have scary freaks. Dominique Orange is also maybe not the scariest guy. He's actually very, very pleasant. Both of them are when you meet them in person. But he is intimidating with his size and a potential difference maker there. And Dallas Turner, like we talked about this a lot when they drafted him, the lightning that exists in that guy, his burst. We saw it last year, the game against Seattle, where he was so good. Like, okay, you got some freaky there. And I think they're going to continue to add a lot more through the draft. Yeah. Okay. You guys on the Grigson stuff. I don't get it. Like he was like a whipping boy for comment sections, and none of you have any idea what he did, but Rob, I don't think Tiernan is a serious successor to O'Neal, more like a high-level upgrade of Brandel as the 4-position O-line backup sixth man. Potentially. I mean, when it comes to Tiernan, his performance at Northwestern was indicative, against the talent that he was facing of someone who could play in the NFL, potentially as a starter at tackle. His build is really great, except for the arm length. And I don't know if he has like the most power and violence, but it's there. So I think that, starting potential at guard makes sense to me, and, swing tackle, as you mentioned. So swing tackle for this year, maybe guard longer term. And why I would never dismiss someone entirely and their chances to be a starter. Like Vandemark, I think it's a little harder to see. He's been in the league a little bit, but you draft someone in the 3rd round that has athletic scores like that, just because there's one thing that's a shortcoming does not mean you have no chance to do it. I mean, we make it seem like that in the NFL. And again, we've sort of lost the soul of the thing when it's like, well, he's got this one shortcoming of his body, can't be great. And it's like, do we remember, and outliers are outliers, but do we remember that like one of the 10 greatest Vikings of all time was an undrafted free agent who was like 40 pounds lighter than he should have been for his position in John Randall? So not everything is just heights and weights and arm length. There's so many guys that fit perfectly into those boxes who never become jack. And then there's a lot of guys who, don't fit, who become really good players in the NFL. And even if you're not a megastar at tackle, if you are a good tackle, then that's worth a heck of a lot. So yeah, I wouldn't dismiss that entirely until we actually see it. I don't know that he has like the exact specs that are required for that position, but I mean, look, a lot's made of that arm length thing, but it's only made when there's a guy who doesn't do well with it. If there's a guy who's playing great but doesn't have the longest arms, we never talk about him. It never gets brought up ever. If someone had like short arms coming out and they just turn out to be a really good player, then it's never brought up again. It's only brought up if Will Campbell doesn't play well in the Super Bowl, and then it's like, remember his arms, even if he had a really good season. So I don't know. That thing drives me a little crazy. Joker, O'Neal has been the best teammate for many years. Really good player. Can't replace him easily. He could be good for many more. New GM wants to win in the trenches. Pay him now. I think that's well said. Contrapaston. Is there a scenario where this season goes poorly enough that Teasley is able to convince the Wilfs to do an actual rebuild? Depends on what you mean. There is the natural tank is what I have dubbed that in the past. And the Vikings have never quite got there. The natural tank is when you think you're going to be good. And this was really last year until the last 5 weeks of the season. You think you're going to be good, and then you are just not. And everything goes wrong, and it is atrocious, and you just end up in the bottom by total accident. That's actually like Kansas City last year. Kansas City, they finished with 6 wins. That was like close to tanking. Kansas City, they wanted to win. They were trying to win every single game. They were trying to go back to the Super Bowl, and everything went wrong for them. They lost 11 games by 1 score, 9 of them by less than 7 points. And I don't know, like their defense wasn't as good. Their offensive line struggled. They didn't run the ball. And even if Mahomes was okay, he wasn't Superman, and they naturally tanked. So that can happen in a situation like this with the Vikings, where you don't know how Kyler Murray's going to fit. You don't know how healthy he is going to end up being throughout a season. You could end up where, McCarthy comes in, doesn't play that well. The defense is nowhere near what it was last year, and you just fall apart. Yeah, I mean, there is 100% a scenario where that happens. And with O'Connell, it's really hard to see them winning less than 7, just because they were able to do that in a year where they had to play Josh Dobbs and win a couple of games with him. But even then, it was like pretty close to losing some of those games, pretty close to losing to, the Atlanta Falcons with Josh Dobbs and having a natural tank season. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible that you're just forced into that position. And then if that's what happens, you don't really have to convince the owners if the results, if you're Nolan Teasley and the results are, hey, we went 6-11, right? We are not good. And we need to move on from these older players. We need to rebuild. But I also think that even if you do well, you're still going to have to do this. even if you have a good season, there are too many players with too many miles on their bodies with too much money. It really is sort of 2022 to 2023. That's what it is, where they did not rebuild totally from 22 to 23. Even from 2019 to 2020, they didn't totally rebuild. They didn't just send everybody out. They didn't play, their fourth string quarterback and lose every game. Or what I would do on Madden is put the punter in at quarterback and lose every game so I could draft number one. Like, they didn't do that, but they did do an overhaul. So it doesn't have to be like a total tank, but it does have to be an overhaul in some capacity. Now, if they win 13 games, well, there's going to be a little less of an overhaul, and Kyler Murray's going to keep being your quarterback. But if they win like 9, then yeah, I mean, you're probably looking at new tight end, moving on from Aaron Jones at that point. He might retire at that point. You're probably not bringing him back. I don't know where they're at with Blake Cashman, but you might be talking about really refreshing the roster, which, they already have in a lot of ways. I mean, moving on from Hargrave Allen, bringing in 2 young defensive tackles, like this draft class has paths to the field fairly quickly within the next year or two. Van Ginkel's going to be the hard one, because if he has a good season, but he's also 32 and he's had injuries, he's also from Iowa. Like, he's a perfect kind of Viking, right? He's so unique. He's so smart. Like, I think you got to try to keep him if they have a good year. But if they have a middling season, then you're probably making a lot of rebuild moves. I don't think that Teasley give him an opportunity to be the AGM. I don't know if he did. I think he had his guys marked for the AGM. I think the report was that he was going to move him to a different position in the organization, and Grigson decided he was going to go somewhere else. I think that's what happened. BM says, I agree, we pile on Grigson, but in the inverse is true as well. What exactly got better with him coming here? Well, I mean, they did have some really good seasons. I mean, sometimes and they made some really good moves. I mean, the 2024 offseason is one of the best handling of free agency that you will ever see in your life. I mean, they got Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel, Blake Cashman. Aaron Jones went for 1,000 yards in 2024, and they won 14 games. So sometimes when someone gets fired or when you have a bad year, you start saying everyone is stupid, everyone should be fired, everyone is just the absolute worst at their jobs. But I don't think that was the case. I think on the pro side, and I mentioned the Jalen Redmond move, so we actually do know that. What actually got better? Jalen Redmond. But they did a lot of great stuff on the pro side of this, which is why the thing's still together. Because if they hadn't, this thing would have been, you talk about natural tanks. This thing, I mean, if they hadn't made those moves to get some of those veteran players, I would throw Stephon Gilmore in the mix too, was huge. Shaq Griffin was huge for them. We can never forget Cam Akers, Fabian Moreau, like all the veterans who have come in here, but they've added up to a lot of wins under Kevin O'Connell. So it hasn't all just been a complete disaster. There's been a lot of good things too. And I'm sure Grigson was involved in the drafting of Donovan Jackson. And, even though he's sort of painted as the guy who could never draft a good offensive lineman, Donovan Jackson looks really good to me. So I don't know. I think about, like, these are real people that, have long histories in football and have done a lot of things in the league. And if they were in the main seat and it didn't work out, then they're painted as like the dumbest person of all time. It's like when they, hired Ryan Pace. Yeah, that's a catastrophic Mitch Trubisky, Patrick Mahomes move for sure. But, it's not like this guy knows nothing about football just because he didn't win the Super Bowl as a general manager, right? That's kind of my point. Yeah, I know that there's been, certain things about Indianapolis and things said about it. I get it. Movie Mike says, talk me into thinking Dylan Bell beating out Ty Felton for wide receiver 3. Sure. Yeah. I think if there's a difference between the two that you might notice, it is that Ty Felton is kind of track runner size and has a track runner feel to him, where the route running with Ty Felton really has to be learned. And I thought that he looked pretty good in minicamp. He looked like he'd been working at it. He looked like he'd been improving in minicamp. So, not the pads on. Last year, though, Felton, I thought, was pretty stiff as a route runner, like pretty kind of straight up. That's why I say track runner type, where the flexibility and agility to get in and out of those routes, it needed work and it needed detail. where Dylan Bell, to me, does not run anywhere close to the 40 as Ty Felton, I think. I think Bell was like a 4.5 40, but the natural cuts that he makes, like the jukes and getting low to the ground when he makes a cut, that seems a little more natural to Dylan Bell, though they didn't have him run a lot of routes in Georgia. And we've talked about that, about their offense and so forth, but there is a feel to him of natural fluid athlete that you could see just thriving right away, potentially. Now, we're a long way away from that conversation, but and also it's really wide receiver 4 because Juwan Jennings is going to be wide receiver 3. But I like this question. You're hitting it on the head with the talk me into's. Perfect. Like, love this. This is exactly right. This is exactly what I wanted, Movie Mike. So keep doing this in the comment section and we're going to have a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, I think that would be the answer, is that if Ty Felton is kind of more of a special teamer and an occasional guy that you could bring in and use his speed with the ball in his hands in a go route, and Dylan Bell is more of a fluid athlete, more of a complete wide receiver who is big yards after catch, natural tackle breaker. I know they put him in the backfield sometimes. So if he's like a light version of Percy Harvin, where he can kind of do it all, Harvin, of course, is an all-time talent, but if this is like some version of that with not the all-time talent, but maybe just good talent enough to play at Georgia, that could be a good wide receiver 3 into the future. I do think, draft status tells a story. No team drafted Dylan Bell. I mean, that's like a lot of wide receivers were drafted instead of Dylan Bell. So it doesn't disqualify you entirely, but it definitely adds a layer of skepticism if no one decided that a receiver from Georgia who's on the biggest stage wasn't somebody that they wanted to bring in. But also, Ty Felton was a back end of the 3rd round guy. It's not like, oh my gosh, there's no way that an undrafted free agent could usurp this guy. So I could see it. And I think that's what everyone is seeing with Dylan Bell to make us talk about him as much as we do, is this fluid athleticism that you sort of know it when you see it. I talked about it with Damon Claiborne, same kind of thing. It's like, oh, now Claiborne runs a 4.3, so there's that. That's a little more special. But, 40 times with wide receivers, they just don't tell a good story. They never have. And there's a funny thing about that, and I probably bring it up every year during draft time because we love wide receivers, is that 40 time has actually had an inverse relationship with draft success, because guys are so often overdrafted because of their 40 times. And they actually succeed less when they have the higher 40 times because they're overdrafted versus, draft position. So maybe there's something there with Dylan Bell in terms of like maybe not having the best 40. If he had a higher 40, maybe he would have been drafted. I don't know. Okay, guard guy, there you go. Guard guy. I was hoping to see you with a talk me into, and you've got one. Talk me into this offensive line being elite this year. What would that do for the offense? Well, I actually don't think it's hard to talk you into the offensive line being elite, because you have elite players at the 2 most important positions, and they need to be healthy, and I think we all agree on that. Christian Darrisaw is one of the 5 best offensive tackles in the NFL when he's fully healthy. Even last year, the guy was clearly fighting it when he was out there. And when he pulled himself out of games, I mean, you could look on the tape and see like there's something that's not right with Darrisaw and his recovery. And I think he was just trying really hard to fight through that. And I guess the ACL injury was much worse than it was like really told to us, to the public. And the recovery was supposed to take a full year. It was a little less than that for him, and maybe came back a little too early. I don't know, whatever it might have been for last year. But if he's back to 100% and you see him moving as fluidly as he did before, and you see the aggressiveness come back to him, because I thought that was a little lacking during last year where he's playing a little more timid. I mean, he's one of the 5 best players in the NFL at that position. And when he was at his absolute best, people were comparing him to Trent Williams. I don't know if he ever gets there, if the injury is going to set him back, but he did say this is the best that he's felt since 2024. So we'll take him at his word for that. If he's 90% of Christian Darrisaw, he's still a top 10 tackle. Left guard, Donovan Jackson. I'm very, very high on Donovan Jackson for a few reasons. I don't know if he is going to be like the best player in the league at that position. I mean, You expect a first round draft pick to be good, but it's not like Quentin Nelson where this was an all-time type of guard talent, or Zach Martin, who they knew, man, like if this guy, you put him at guard, he's going to be a legend. And then he was. But I think Jackson has a ton of talent, and where he's really great, he is physically gifted, but where he's really great is from the shoulders up. He is a physical player, he's aggressive, and he's very, very intelligent. And if you've listened to any interviews from him, or if I wrote about him last year, I had a great conversation one-on-one with Donovan at his locker last year, and I wrote about it. And just his mentality is so good. It's like so on point for an offensive lineman to fit in that room and to take steps forward for this year. So you know he's going to be working at it. You know how much he cares about it. And you also know that he can learn really well. So I think that Jackson, who went from last year, he was a pretty average guard last year. For a rookie, that's good because guard is a nightmare for rookies. And if he ascends to being, top 20 at that position, Blake Brandle's maybe the hardest one to talk you into, but I think that Brandle being a very smart player and being able to lead the offensive line is more important than him being perfect as a blocker. Fries has already lost some weight. Looks like he's himself again. The guy last year, he was trying his butt off after that injury with the leg, but when you're set back an entire offseason, that's where these guys get their body ready for the year. You can't make it 17 games in the same shape if you don't have an offseason. So I think he will be improved. And then, O'Neal is great. So if those guys play 75% of the snaps together, they will be a top 5 offensive line. Top 7? Call it top 7. If there are injuries, I think they can survive them better than last year at certain positions, but I'm still concerned about other positions. I would like to see another guard brought in. Guard guy, I think you approve of this, but I think as we've gone through, the tackles are really, really steady right now. And Michael Juergens was okay when he went in last year. He was fine. Like if he has to go in a handful of games for Blake Brandle, I think he'll be okay. But Brandle has a really good record of health. So I think that there's a great chance that they are somewhere in that range of being elite. Now, what would that do for the offense? I think you're talking about a completely different looking offense if that offensive line is that good. Kyler Murray with time to throw, doesn't have to rush, doesn't have to scramble right away. He can actually feel comfortable sitting in the pocket a little bit longer, which has always been a critique, but I think you can get him to do it if he's comfortable with the offensive line. And where it could really pay major dividends is the running game. And yeah, somebody's going to say KOC will never stick to the running game. And okay, maybe not. But man, if you add a improved run scheme to this offensive line and you're in the top 10 in rush EPA, I think you could be that if this offensive line is elite. And that's where, if you're trying to make an argument of talk you into the 2026 Vikings, I think it starts there with maybe the most complete on paper, the most complete version of the offense that we have seen. I think total with Jawan Jennings, with Max Bredesen and Josh Oliver, like you have versatility. You're like a little more able to do multiple personnel type of looks. You're bringing in someone to help you with the rush scheme. Like if the offensive line stays healthy, you should be able to run block really well. So maybe I don't know if I talked you into that. B. Shane says, never should happen, but talk me into trading Jefferson and taking the Green Bay approach to the wide receiver by committee. And you include an emoji as well. Yeah. So this is why I love the talk me into game, because like, I don't agree with this, but I'll go for it. I think with the Jefferson talk you into trading him, the argument would go like this, that after this year, look around at the amount of money that you're going to have to spend for a top wide receiver. And now age curves, they don't hit the wide receivers anywhere near as hard as other people. So, but still, you could make a case that the best years have already happened of Justin Jefferson, and you wasted them by not winning a playoff game. So once he becomes expensive, if the production isn't the same, then you might be paying $45 million for a receiver who is more like the 12th best receiver in the league as opposed to number 1. Now, again, I don't agree with that. I think he's going to be great for many, many years to come. But statistically speaking, great wide receivers into their late 20s and 30s, they often do have a dip from where they were at like 24 to 27. So you could make that argument. And really what it would be is, how are you going to build a complete roster if you have this much money poured into Darisaw? Jefferson's making $45 million. You're going to extend Brian O'Neill. if you're really overhauling this thing, then build it really from scratch. Take it all the way to the bottom, get 3 first-round draft picks or whatever, two firsts and 2 twos for him. Go wild in the NFL draft, pick wide receivers. And one thing we know is that there's always a ton of wide receivers who are coming out. The next draft class is always talked about as even better for wide receiver than the one before. So spend one of those on a wide receiver, aim for the rookie contract again, and really try to rebuild this thing as a complete roster to chase the Super Bowl. It's not a great argument because what you really want is to draft a quarterback, stick him with Justin Jefferson, and then just win a bunch of games. And the rookie quarterback contract will negate it. But that might even be part of it too. I mean, imagine Kyler Murray finds out his favorite wide receiver is Ty Felton and it's not Justin Jefferson. And you're like, well, we got to keep Murray and we got to keep Ty Felton. And, I don't know, like this is a hard one, B. Shane, because I just can't really make a good argument for moving on from like one of the 10 best players in the entire NFL. But I think that that's how you would do it, is like, I'm not going to do the what if they won with him, because that's not his fault. We know it's not his fault, but it's really about like allocation of resources. You're basically paying, if you have to pay Murray, you're paying 2 quarterbacks because Jefferson's contract is going to be close to a quarterback. That's hard to do, to build a complete roster if that's how much money you're spending on him. I don't think I did a great job, but I tried. This movie, Mike, I can't help you with, I don't know what Westward is. And if you ask me about TV shows, movies, usually watching football. I'm not great at that. There are some things that I've seen. I have seen a lot of House Hunters episodes. So oftentimes when I'm working, when I'm writing, because I'll do the show and then I'll go upstairs and I'll be sitting in, on my computer and writing for the newsletter, purpleinsider.football, everybody. If, you have a chance, go sign up, and House Hunters will be on. And that's like the easiest thing for me to keep writing and then sort of look up and watch House Hunters. So I've seen a lot of that. If you have House Hunters takes, yes. I've seen The Sopranos, I've seen The Wire, I've seen Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, like the classics. But if you're talking about like things that have come out in the last couple of years, not a lot of them. Not a lot. Oh, I did watch Succession. That's probably the most recent thing that I've watched. Anyway, BM, let's make this difficult. Talk me into Dominique Orange becoming Defensive Rookie of the Year. Okay, let's find out. Let's go over to FanDuel here. If there's Defensive Rookie of the Year? I want to see if there's even odds for Dominique Orange to be Defensive Rookie of the Year. There should be, right? Maybe not. David Bailey is the favorite at plus 500. Ruben Bain plus 550. Arvell Reese plus 800. Sonny Styles plus 850. Those are the top guys. Do we see Dominique Orange anywhere? Caleb Banks is plus 7,500. That actually might be a good bet, as Caleb Banks. If he goes crazy and has 7 sacks or something, which he's capable of, he could win that. That's probably the only player here with odds like that. Is he somewhere? I'm scrolling. Is Dominique Orange somewhere? I could control F this thing, but I like the idea. Ephesians Prysock has odds. Are you kidding me? Some of these people I've never even heard of. And I still don't see Dominique Orange. Oh, there he is. I found it. He does have odds. Plus 20,000. There you go. There you go. BM, you can bet plus 20,000 for Dominique Orange to win Rookie of the Year on FanDuel. I love that Ephesians Prysock is more likely. Come on, guys. Who else? Zane Durant. Some of these guys might not even play. Xavier Harris, he's the same thing as the Dominique Orange, except for wasn't drafted as high. Come on, guys. Zakee Wheatley. What are we doing here? Okay, anyway. So all right, back to the chat. All right, well, here's the argument. If the Vikings were to have a top 5 defense and they have some national TV games, and during those national TV games, which I think really shapes a lot of the voting for lots of stuff, it shapes perceptions still, that even with all the data and everything else we have. I remember when Sam Bradford was with the Eagles, he actually played really well for the 2015 Eagles. And he had a really bad national TV game, I think against Arizona. And it was atrocious. And when the Vikings got him, it was like, did you see that game against Arizona? We can't get this guy. And it was like, what? He played a bunch of other games, guys. So imagine that Dominique Orange is on a top 5 defense and the Vikings play a lot of national TV games where he is awesome and they shut down the run and they're showing him, because he's a lovable dude, they're showing him all the time. He's the big citrus. He's got the nickname. Man, and Chris Collinsworth's going, now we're talking about a guy who's 325 listed, but he's actually 350, I bet. And look at him shut down this play and shut down that play. And the Vikings win like 13 games. You could have somebody like him get a lot of attention. And maybe if it's like a Linval Joseph type of situation where let's say he just gets 5 sacks. I don't know. The other team forgets about him a couple of times and he gets 5 sacks. So if he had 5 sacks and like a 75 PFF grade, and every time they were on national TV, he was just totally dominant. And then it became like a thing on the internet where he was getting memed and they're talking big citrus. So people are like bringing oranges to the stadium and stuff like that. Maybe, right? You could see a sensation of Dominique Orange. Now, what is that, like the Kevin Malone on The Office where he says anything that's, I don't know, 10,000 to 1, he'll put it on there. So like, hey, put $1 on Dominique Orange to win Rookie of the Year. Did I talk you into that? Maybe. BM talked me into Kevin O'Chronic run game ignorer. Maybe you need to leave the jokes to Joker. Kevin O'Chronic run game ignorer is not exactly catchy. Actually embracing the run and heavy personnel. So they do a lot of heavy personnel overall. You know, Josh Oliver plays a lot of snaps and CJ Ham increased his snap usage last year. So we have seen him do this to some extent and build play action off of it. I think that really what it comes down to is, one, as we talked about, the offensive line being elite or really, really good at run blocking. But it really comes down to trusting Frank Smith and Keith Carter and what they're doing schematically and trusting the success. I think for Kevin O'Connell, it's got to happen early. That what happens to, as you called him, Kevin O'Chronic run game ignorer, we could do better than that, I think, BM. But what happens to him is that they haven't had a lot of explosive runs. So it feels like, all right, there's 5, there's 3, there's 5. Like, it doesn't really inspire you to want to run 23 times to get from end zone to end zone. Like, what you're really looking for is 3, 5, 25. Like, that's when you have the best run games in the league. Adrian Peterson would be like this: 3, -2, 5, 7, 50. Like, if you got that, and at any given time, your guy can go for 50, it's a little more inspiring to push the run button over and over again, right? But if the Vikings were to come out against the first 2 teams they play, which are the Packers and the Bears, and they were to average 5.5 yards a carry, the run scheme, the D-line is being dominated by the O-line. Darrisaw looks great with Donovan Jackson. They're just running left time and time again. Linebackers' heads are spinning because of all the misdirection, which I think Frank Smith will bring some of that from Miami. The details are great because of Keith Carter and everything. And you just feel like we're owning this game because of the run game. It's a great feeling. Remember how it felt for the Vikings against like Pittsburgh last year when Pittsburgh was Kenneth Gainwelling you to death? That's a bad feeling for a defense. That feels like you're drowning when the other team can run over and over. I think if you're doing that, and maybe there's not total trust in Kyler or JJ, that you could really embrace like overpowering the other team with the run game. And that might be something too. Now, I know Nolan Teasley, his job is not going to be to tell Kevin O'Connell what plays to call, how to, set up the offensive scheme. But if I'm Kevin O'Connell, I may be asking for a little bit of feedback on, hey, how did you guys like think about the run in Seattle? Because my biggest thing with the run, there's a hidden element of it. When, yes, it's bad rush EPA to run on like 2nd and 10 or whatever, but there's a little hidden element of it, which is if your quarterback is never on 3rd and long, it's better for your quarterback. And this is a Gary Kubiak, Clint Kubiak, Mike Shanahan, 3rd and short, theoretically, can be converted. And now when everyone is going for 4th downs, this means even more. I think this is why there's an uptick in the run game. is that everyone is going for fourth downs now. So if you have 2nd down and 7 and you run for 4 and you've got 3rd and 3, your percentage chance to convert that's probably like 55 to 60%, which is not 100. But if you miss it, your chance once again to convert on 4th down is probably 55 to 60%. So 2 dice rolls at 55 to 60%. Do the math for me, somebody who's better at this. You've got a pretty good shot to convert on one of those 2. Right? So that's why a 2nd down run on 2nd and 7 could actually make sense. Even by expected points added, it's not great because EPA would say you actually want to avoid 3rd down altogether. Yes, you do. But if your quarterback is not great on 3rd and long, but is really good on 3rd and short, then it might be something to think about. And I've got a little more research on that coming for you at some point. I've been working on for a show. Joe says, talk me into Turner, Banks, and Orange being better next year than Grenard, Allen, and Hargrave. Yeah, I think that that's possible. Definitely think it's possible because, well, Grenard last year, he was so close so many times. Poor guy. He was really close. He had like 47 pressures and 2 sacks or something. He had a top 20 pass rush win rate and just could not sack the quarterback last year for anything. He let Jared Goff get out of his grasp. Part of it was that there were a lot of running quarterbacks the Vikings played, like, Jalen Hurts, Caleb Williams. Like, that's going to happen sometimes. But Dallas Turner has rocket fuel in his shoes when we see him like be at his absolute best and get a jump on, the other player. I think about the first time I thought this was against Chicago in his rookie year when Chicago played at US Bank Stadium. He had this play where he sort of did a dip around the edge and then accelerated, and it was insane. It was like, what did we just watch? So the flashes have always been there. If the flashes come together in year 3, which it often takes 3 to 4 years for pass rushers who are not Myles Garrett, not number 1 overall draft picks. You saw this with Odafe Oweh. I think there's actually a great comparison. Odafe Oweh for the Ravens was kind of just okay for his first couple years, and then it just took off. And he got like, I don't know, $75 million or something in free agency from Washington. This could be Dallas Turner. Year 3 is a great year for these guys to take over. I also think he's coming in with a lot of confidence. And I have a great deal of respect for the fact that Jonathan Grenard, in joining the Philadelphia Eagles, went out of his way to say how much he believes in Dallas Turner and how much he liked working with him and everything else. So I kind of believe Jonathan. He's one of the smarter football players that I've come across. Really going to miss talking with him at his locker about stuff, but he was huge on Dallas Turner. I did an article at the end of the year when I talked to Jonathan about Dallas Turner. And so I think that there's another step there. And when it comes to Banks and Orange, maybe with Allen and Hargrave, you had experience and that was helpful and they could get into the backfield. But what they didn't have is size. I mean, Hargrave is a pretty big guy. Allen's who am I, a normal, to tell them that they're not that big, but not in comparison to Caleb Banks and Dominique Orange. Orange is a much more true nose tackle to where he might not have as many pressures as Javon Hargrave or sacks, but he may make a bigger impact on the run game. And also, I think he's going to be useful in the pass rush game the same way Harrison Phillips was, as long as he doesn't mind just moving bodies. And Caleb Banks, like there's a world where, who's made me think of this is, and they're playing right now, I don't know how the Lynx are doing, but is Olivia Miles, where Olivia Miles for the Lynx is better in the WNBA than she was in college. I mean, she had good numbers in college and was a great player, was drafted number 2 overall, so clearly a great talent. But now the way the game is played in the WNBA, she's better. She's got more room. She's a better scorer. And I was thinking about that potentially for Caleb Banks, where the role that he's playing in the NFL might be a little bit different than what he was asked to do in college. When you are the biggest guy, a lot of times they're going to say, hey, just line up here in the middle as the biggest guy and just, smash forward, right? Whereas with Brian Flores, it is so much more intricate what they ask these guys to do. So the body moving element of it, I mean, he could be way better at that than Jonathan Allen or Javon Hargrave. So what I mean by body moving is, like, let's say he lines up at the 4-eye, so just inside the offensive tackle. Let's say that's where he lines up. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to loop Dallas Turner into the middle on a rush. And his job is to go from the 4-eye and just push that tackle out. Like, just take him as far out of the play as possible. Caleb Banks has the power and strength to do that, and then allow Dallas Turner to loop around and have space there as a free runner to the quarterback. You see Van Ginkel do this all the time. So let's just say that that's the play. You know who is not great at that is Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave. Like, those guys wanted to get in the backfield. They wanted to line up, and eventually Flores sort of relented and decided to let them do this at the end of the season, or really it's the second half. It wasn't really just the end of the season. It was coming out of the bye week. Eventually he just said, let's get them one-on-one matchups and let them win, because that's what they want to do. That's what they're best at. But Dominique Orange is going to be learning in this Flores system. So it's going to be a little bit more what Flores wants from these two guys than what Hargrave and Allen wanted. And then, Hargrave was a little salty on Twitter. Guard guy said, would KO ever give up and just start putting guards in the backfield for pass blocking? Hey, you mentioned that, but Randall McDaniel lined up in the backfield sometimes as a fullback. So it's anything is possible. That's also Patrick Ricard. If you've ever seen Patrick Ricard play, plays for the Giants now, played for the Ravens. He's like 300 pounds as a fullback. So anything is possible, guard guy, but I don't think so. I don't think that O'Connell will do that. BM talked me into a scenario in the next decade where the NFL stops growing and the salary cap can no longer increase by leaps and bounds every year. Yeah, I think that might be coming. There might be like a bubble that bursts. Maybe not, though, because everyone just keeps sort of buying whatever they ask you to buy. But if there is a point where you're just on too many streaming services, fans are frustrated, they decide, we're just really not going to do this anymore. We're not going to buy. I mean, right now, you're probably at the peak of that, where YouTube TV, or YouTube, people will watch it on there, and Netflix, people will buy Netflix to watch, football for a month or whatever. I don't know if there's like many more. Tubi is a thing, and Pluto TV, Victory Plus. Like, if every app starts buying, football, you might get to a point where those apps just decide it's not worth it. Like, Netflix might decide, like, we just didn't get the numbers that we were expecting to get, and we're going to kind of bail on sports. These companies are always ebbing and flowing. They're always making decisions where they're trying things that cost billions of dollars and then changing their direction. The company that makes my shoes, I don't know, does anybody else wear Allbirds, has now decided to be an AI data company or something. I'm like, what the hell? Where am I going to get my shoes now? But if you're Nike, feel free to sponsor. I know Diet Dr. Pepper hasn't come through, but maybe Nike. I wear this hat every day. But anyway, so these companies are always making shifts and changes. You might go all in on football and decide, hey, we're all in on this. And then 2-3 years later, we just didn't like the bang for buck. And all of a sudden, you're out on it. That might happen. I think that fans will keep filling stadiums and so forth. But it could level out, because coming out of the pandemic, so many of these companies exploded, right? Like Netflix. Oh my gosh. What else was anybody doing during the pandemic other than watching Netflix? That I did see some shows during that time. BoJack Horseman was one that I watched at that time. But these companies and the streaming and stuff got to be crazy popular coming out of the pandemic. But if it does level off, then there won't be new things to buy. If there isn't a new television contract with ESPN right around the corner or something, there could be a time where it doesn't continue to go year after year after year. I don't see that happening necessarily, especially because of the international element. The amount of money that they're bringing in from international stuff seems to be growing. And while there's a lot of grumbling about teams traveling to Mexico City and Australia and everywhere else, it earns Raj a lot of money. And he's been right. Roger has been right about the international stuff. There are a gazillion more international fans, and we love that here on the show for all of you. I have quite a few British people who listen to the show. So shout out to all you guys. I've seen that jump immensely since I first started doing this. I don't know that it's ever going to just completely level off, but I think if I'm talking you into it, that's the way I would do it. BM, does anybody ever look at our offensive line and stop and ask yourself, wait, are we seriously relying on Blake Brandel for 17 games? Well, he did play guard for 17 games. I don't know how different that's going to be. His record of health has been really good. And, when I looked at Brandel last year, so initially when I went into the offseason, I said center's got to be their top priority, has to be. And I do wonder if Jake Slaughter would have been somebody or Logan Jones would have been someone they would have drafted, because Eric DeCosta, when he did his podcast with the Ravens media after the draft, he said, hey, we were going to draft one of those guys. And then they went much earlier than we thought they were going to go. And I wonder if that happened to the Vikings, if they were thinking maybe Jake Slaughter or Logan Jones, and then it was like, oh, okay. And clearly no one felt that like Sam Hecht was as good as some of the draft people thought or whatever. So then what, right? Lloyd Cushenberry. I mean, when you compare the way that Blake Brandel played last year to some of the other offensive linemen, we can look this up. Do I have my PFF up? We can look this up. Let's look this up. Let's look up Blake Brandel and how he did. No, wait, that's college. Here we go. I was looking at Joey Bosa, as you can see recently. Although it sounds like Joey Bosa is not going to play. That was a report today, by the way. I was never really thinking him for the Vikings, but, because he's more of a 4-3 guy. But let's look up the blocking grades for Blake Brandel, because I've kind of referenced this. Did he get enough snaps? Maybe I need 20% of snaps, or maybe 50 is fine. Yeah, he's there for 50. So if we look at Blake Brandel overall, where he ranked last year, he was 24th overall out of 32 centers. He was right in the same range as Jake Andrews from Houston, Graham Barton from Tampa Bay, Cade Mays, who is now playing for the Detroit Lions, right? I think he went to Detroit. Garrett Bradbury is there. John Michael Schmidt's there. So, some below average type of centers is kind of where he settled. It was Jalen Sundell. What did I call him? Jared? Sorry, Jalen. I thought it might have been Jalen. Anyway, well, his pass blocking grade, though, of course, the one that's a little bit more important, he was actually 12th. And he was right next to the guy that won the Super Bowl, Jalen Sundell, in pass blocking. So his pass blocking grade was actually pretty good. And who was it that just got, I think the Chargers got Tyler Biadasz, and he's right in the same ballpark as him. So, I mean, Drew Dahlman, who was a great player, he was 10th. Brandel was 12th. The question is, could you do better than that? He was actually higher in pass blocking than Tyler Linderbaum. I mean, I know Linderbaum was like the best run blocker, but it's really not that bad. It's really not as bad as you would have thought based on, and really, if we look, let's take a look. Where did it go? His one game that was really tough was the Eagles. And I think he was fine other than that playing center. Yeah, the Cleveland, of course, they have one of the best. That was his first start, and they have one of the best D-lines in the league. He graded a 41. And then against the Eagles, the next week it was a 51. So he gave up 6 pressures. That was terrible. But after that, from week 8 on, let's take a look at week 8 on for Blake Brandel, where he ranked, because we could do this. And I know it's not always great form to go like, hey, where was he at week 8 on? But I think it's relevant for Garrett Bradbury. That's Garrett Bradbury. For Blake Brandel, that's the Super Bowl. We don't want that. We want week 8 beyond that. Let's see where he ranked. This is how I do it, folks. Let's see. Brandel 10th in pass blocking after week 8. And overall, he was 19th out of 30. Well, no, wait, I've got this. Let me do it this way. Let me adjust that. He was, okay, pass blocking. Oh, he didn't play enough snaps to qualify. Okay, that makes sense because he wasn't the starter the whole time. So if we lower the qualification numbers, yeah, he was 10th, and 65 would put him at 19th out of 39. So, I mean, if you followed all that, the bottom line was that Blake Brandel was okay. He was not by any means like unbelievable, but he was a serviceable center after the Eagles game, of which I don't know who can play offensive line against Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. That's why they were a top 5 defense last year. So, Leonard said, I agree with your take on Ezra Cleveland, advocated for him in the chats, and was always told by fellow fans that he was unwilling to remain a guard. You're right that Austin Schlottman's going to start somewhere. Where did I see him starting? Maybe it was Tennessee. He's starting for somebody. I think it's Tennessee is where he's starting. But yeah, Ezra Cleveland. So Ezra Cleveland was always a tough one for me, because I would always kind of hear that the Vikings brass didn't really like him and that they didn't think he was tough enough. And there was kind of a like, he just doesn't really like what is it, like spit gasoline or whatever it is. And yet his PFF numbers were always good. So I tend to lean toward that. And I know people will always tell me, oh, well, you can't always just go with just the PFF numbers. And I get it. But when you start to match up the PFF numbers versus who gets paid, who becomes a starter, who, sticks on teams longer term, who signs in free agency for what, matches up pretty good. And I also think they're just better at analyzing offensive line than I am. I mean, I've got Searles, so he's always a cheat code to be able to ask when I'm watching tape and stuff. But every single snap of every single player, grading that, when I've brought this up before, that, the difference between a good offensive lineman and a bad one is like 2 snaps a game. So they're tracking that data and they're going to give you a better analysis than me. So I think it was kind of a play style mentality type of thing that they didn't love from Ezra Cleveland. But at the end of the day, his athleticism, I think, made him a really good pass protector. Andrew talked me into the D-line finishing top 5 in sacks and pressures in 2026. So I cannot probably talk you into the D-line alone, but I think I could talk you into the Vikings finishing top 5 in sacks and pressures. Because how about a scenario where, okay, Dallas Turner gets 11 sacks. He is your star pass rusher. He's 11 sacks. But last year, the top 5, let me think of what top 5 would have been. The league leader was 68, and that was the Denver Broncos. But the next best was like 53. So top 5 would have been maybe, call it like 47 sacks. So can we add up to 47 sacks with the players the Vikings have? Let's give 10 to Dallas Turner, and let's give 8 to Andrew Van Ginkel. So we start with 18, or let's go 7 to Van Ginkel. So we've got 30 to make up. Can we make up 30 between a bunch of different players? So Caleb Banks gets 5, and now we're 25 away. And you get, I don't know, Jalen Redmond is 4, and now we're, 19 away. And whatever. I'm not going to do the complete math here, but Levi Drake Rodriguez gets 2. Dominique Orange gets 2. You have Eric Wilson gets 6. You have Blake Cashman gets 3. And Josh Metellus gets 3. I think that if you take the accumulation of all the players that will rush the passer, that you could probably add up to somewhere in the 40s. And really, they did this last year. I mean, they didn't have anybody with over 7 sacks, and yet they still finished with like 42, 45 sacks. So I could easily see the entire team. And I do think that Banks and Orange and Levi Drake Rodriguez, who is a very strong guy, also a body moving type, I think that they will create a lot of lanes for these blitzers, and Eric Wilson's going nowhere on this defense, man. I mean, from what happened last year, he is going to be doing that again. He's going to be a pass rushing linebacker that they're going to use a ton. And we know Cashman's good at it. He's got a lot of sacks or a lot of pressures. Harrison Smith was really good at it. I could see that Josh Metellus would maybe get to the quarterback a couple times. So I think that's very possible. The actual D-line alone, no, I can't see that happening because you just don't have a Myles Garrett, Brian Burns and Abdul Carter. Like there are other combos, other D-lines that are probably going to produce more sacks. But as a team, I think you could get there if things go really well. And some of it depends. I was talking with Mike Clay about this the other night. Some of it does depend on just like who you play. Because if you play backup quarterbacks, they tend to get sacked a lot. If you play starting quarterbacks like Jared Goff, even Caleb Williams, I mean, he dropped his sack rate wildly last year. So he was so much harder to sack. Jordan Love doesn't take sacks. Like this division doesn't take sacks. Jordan Love is one of the best in the league. I think he's second best since 2023, Jordan Love. And I've got these stats in my head because I've been working on this series over at purpleinsider.football. And if you try to log in and you have problems, I realized you could put www and that it'll work. I don't know. So that's just a note. But check that out. Sign up for the newsletter. You can sign up for free and get some of the stuff if you want to. Anyway, so I've been doing all this research, and it's just sort of some of these numbers are in my head, but it really popped out to me that Jordan Love was the second best, other than Bo Nix, over the last 3 years in terms of sack rates. And we know Jared Goff is good at it. We know that Caleb Williams has gotten good at it. So that's why it's hard for the Vikings to rack up that many sacks. But if Tyrod Taylor was playing instead of Jordan Love, you might sack him 5 times. Some of that depends on just who you end up playing. And who else do they play? The AFC East, oh man, Josh Allen, very tough to sack. Drake May sackable. Malik Willis probably sackable. And Geno Smith, they might sack him 10 times if he's even playing by the time the Vikings face him. I'm going to guess not. I'm going to guess Cade Klubnik will be playing by the time they face him. So you can get some sacks there. And the South, you could sack Bryce Young. You could definitely sack Tua or Mike. Well, Michael Penix is kind of good at avoiding sacks. It actually might be a hard schedule to get the sacks. Some of you guys with your jokes. Joker, even if it looks like the right move, I don't believe that the Vikings will be sellers at the deadline, even if they're around 500, predicting 5-4, ending 12-5. If they're 5-4, they're not selling. Yeah, they might. I mean, you might add like a smaller piece, but you're definitely not selling if you're 5-4 because the end of the schedule is a lot easier. John, not ripping Grigson per se. However, as you said, he's been around football for a long time. Can you honestly say he was a good scout or AGM? No, I mean, I don't know. He was a good enough scout to work with the Philadelphia Eagles and then become a general manager. So he had done enough from the behind the scenes side for someone to hire him as a GM. And then after he was a GM, it wasn't like they sent him to Costa Rica like Toby in The Office. He continued to be in the NFL and work for credible organizations, including the Seattle Seahawks. So I think that some of the narrative is so much based on what happened when he was a GM, but they're just very different. This is like Kwesi going right back to San Francisco and getting a very good position with the 49ers. Like they love Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah. They think he's very valuable to their front office. Being a GM is totally different. I mean, when you hear stories about the things, I've told the Land O'Lakes story because I love it, with Rick Spielman. And I know some of you have said like, wait, why was he dealing with Land O'Lakes? But the GM means you manage everything. And it means that you have a lot of people who are in your ear to make different moves, to do different things, to make different trades. You have a whole organization worth of people that make decisions, and then one person's name gets put on it. And you also have a coach who played, and I'm not saying that Grigson did a great job of building that O-line and you're just, misremembering, but it's like so much gets pinned on one person all the time. When it comes to this, when that job is really a management position, you're managing a lot of people that make decisions and scout and everything else. So that's different from being a contributor at an AGM position or in a scouting position or senior football advisor or whatever it may be, where you're in the meetings and you're giving your perspectives and opinions, but you're not pushing the final buttons. Clearly he's a respected voice when it comes to that, or otherwise teams wouldn't consistently be, having him as part of their front offices. So that's my only point on Ryan Grigson. Like celebrating his exit is we've gone too far, it's the same. It's along the same lines we talk about with the economics of football, where it's awesome that we know so much about the economics of football. But if you've sort of reached, we're trading Justin Jefferson, then you've gone too far. Like one of those signs, like if you've gotten here, you need to turn around. If you've gotten so economics pilled that like you think that they should trade Jefferson, turn around, go home. It's the same sort of like, if you think you know what front office guys do who are senior football advisors, then like, you probably don't. That's the point. Joker talked me into the Titans winning the Super Bowl on Cam Ward's rookie contract. That's actually not that hard, believe it or not. I mean, because Cam Ward was not good last year. I don't know who would have been with that team, with that coach. It was just, oh my gosh, it was just a nightmare. Their coach had no idea what he was doing, and they had no weapons for him. I was looking at this. His just top wide receivers would make your eyes like melt with sadness, because he just didn't have any weapons. And so they draft Carnell Tate, which is a great draft pick. Obviously, when a team takes a top wide receiver, well done. And they have added some players to that mix. They've drafted some high offensive linemen. They have kept Jeffrey Simmons. They've started building up their defense. And if Cam Ward turns a corner and all that talent, that arm talent that he has, and he had moments last year for sure. Now he was kind of a check down Charlie, I think out of terror and guys not being open. But if the confidence sort of arrives with a new offensive coordinator and their defense continues to be built up under Robert Saleh, who has taken a defense to the Super Bowl, and he turns the right corner with the right weapons and the right offensive line. I mean, look, Bo Nix last year is a good example. Bo Nix is one ankle away from being in the Super Bowl. I think we agree that Bo Nix wins that game that Jared Stidham could not win, right? I mean, Bo Nix could have gotten 13 points. So I think that they win that game if Bo Nix is there. Nix by PFF was the 17th best quarterback in the league last year. And I think he was 29th or something in quarterback rate. It wasn't that bad, but he was not the best quarterback in the league. Now he had clutch moments and he actually had a high big time throw rate, which may have helped them a lot. Stayed within himself when it came to the offense, never got sacked, didn't throw a lot of picks. I was looking this stat up that Bo Nix only threw an interception or got sacked 5 times out of every 100 dropbacks. So it's like once every 3 games, either a sack or an interception. So that's pretty dang good. But if Ward kind of turns into that player where he's got some big time potential down the field with his arm talent, which we know he has, and he can keep the train on the tracks for a team that could build around their defense, give him weapons. They've been drafting O-line. It's anybody on the rookie contract. It's not crazy to think that they could have a pop-up year. The Texans, man, the Texans are legitimate Super Bowl contenders, and CJ Stroud, who is good, is not that good, and they are legitimate Super Bowl contenders. It's not as crazy as you think, because if I had told you on the day that Lovie Smith blew the first overall pick for the Texans with a Davis Mills late touchdown, if I had told you the Texans will be a Super Bowl contender in just a couple years, you'd be like, get out of here. They are 10 years away. You're never 10 years away in the NFL. You're always about 3. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's that crazy. That's why tanking, that's why we advocate it sometimes. Not that the Vikings do it, but that's why we talk about it, is it's just not that nuts. If you hit on some picks, if Carnell Tate's amazing, all of a sudden you're a serious team. Joker talked me into KO being a changed man. How will he stop being the only coach in history not obsessed with running the ball? Do we have a hypnotist? Yeah, I mean, okay, well, put yourself in Kevin O'Connell's shoes, though, a little bit. Who have they had at running back that makes you want to run the ball all the time? Dalvin Cook, first half of the year, they ran quite a bit, 2022, and then he faded. Alexander Mattison and Ty Chandler, is that inspiring to you? Aaron Jones in 24 was pretty good for the first half of the season. Darisaw got hurt. It fell apart. Last year, you have Jordan Mason, who's, look, there are times where they should have just leaned on Jordan Mason and times that it drove me crazy that they didn't. I think the Pittsburgh game was the one where I probably, I don't have too many reactions during games. Like I'm usually just focused and I have notes and I have a chat. And so if you sign up for the Substack, by the way, purpleinsider.football, you can get in on the game chats with me during the game. So I've got all this going on, but there was a play where they, in the middle of the Steelers game, where Jordan Mason runs for like 10 yards, 2 runs in a row, something like that. And then they just drop back Carson Wentz and he takes a sack. And at that point, I probably was having the same reaction as you, like, oh, come on. Like, I mean, what does it take for you to just lean on Mason? So there is that part of it. So I'm not, absolving all blame. There's a running back here who they could have used more last year in Jordan Mason. But I also think that it's still not a Dalvin Cook in his prime. It was not that hard for Kevin Stefanski and Gary Kubiak to go, Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook again. What we should do is throw a screen to Dalvin Cook, because he was unreal during those 2 years. Purple Tears, how many wide receivers do you think that they will keep this year? And if you're just joining, we're doing a lot of Talk Me Intos, by the way. That's kind of the game of the night, is throwing into the chat. So if you're just joining and you haven't thrown one in there, throw it in. Talk me into blank. It could be around the NFL. It could be a Vikings one. It could be one that that I don't believe, so you can troll me with it, which a couple of you have, and I enjoy that. Toss it in. It's been a really, really fun show doing this. But how many wide receivers? I would say probably 5. I mean, I could see 6. The first 3 are obvious. And then, I mean, we're just sort of anointing Dylan Bell, but like undrafted free agents, there's a few of them. Some of them were injured and weren't working out in minicamp and OTAs. That's so hard. It's just so hard to jump right into training camp and not get that little startup. So I think that's why Bell stood out so much. because I think it was Marcus Sanders and Luke something that were not working out. And you're like, guys, that's tough. Not that I'm saying they're not hurt or whatever, but that's just tough to catch up when you get to training camp. But anyway, point being that, Dylan Bell is like on the radar, but I think if you were doing this kind of, hey, undrafted free agents really need to prove it, then it would be Juwan Jennings, Ty Felton, and Miles Price would be the 5 wide receivers. And oftentimes, even with an undrafted free agent, you can get them through, even if there's hype, even if a lot of media is talking about them, even if they had good preseason, you'll get them through waivers. So I would go with 5. BM, I love how deranged you are to take our questions seriously. Yeah, look, man, I think that sometimes the way that I tend to look at this job is like, if you told me 15 years ago, whenever it was that I was coming out of college, that my job would be to chat with a bunch of people who love football as much as I do and who know football and are interested in having a real fun conversation, I'd be like, hell yeah, let's go. So after this, I'm going to go write football for the newsletter. And then before bed, I'm going to continue watching that 2009 game from Cardinals and Colts. This is what I do. I'll never get tired of you guys' questions. Joker talked me into the Packers imploding this year and losing a lot. Would that be funnier than their annual end of season playoff embarrassment, a natural tank ending their good, not great purgatory? That would have to go along with the Jordan Love injury. I just don't see any way that Jordan Love could be their quarterback and they win less than 9 games. I mean, 8 maybe, I guess, if things really went wrong. But Jordan Love last year, I went digging in his numbers, trying to find, was there any shortcomings for him last year? The only thing I could find was that there were a few games where he was just a huge disappointment. Carolina, Philadelphia, Cleveland, but what did they have in common? Those were good defenses. Carolina was middling, but the other 2 were just top-notch defenses. Aside from that, Jordan Love in almost every statistical category, PFF grade, EPA, whatever it might be, quarterback rating, adjusted net yards, whatever stat you use, he was one of the 5 or 7 best quarterbacks in the NFL last year. So if he continues to just be that, then it's very hard to talk you into. But Jordan Love has had 2 years in a row where he has been banged up. Malik Willis had to get in at the end of last year in some big moments for them. And in 2024, he had the injury that he came back too early from against the Minnesota Vikings. If Jordan Love were to miss, if they started out, let's say they start out 4-4, they're just sort of up and down with Micah Parsons not back yet. They're not a very good defense. That's also a possibility. And then Jordan Love gets hurt. Well, then you're asking Tyrod Taylor to come save a season. I don't think they can run the ball all that well. They clearly don't have great wide receivers, even if they have still some good wide receivers. But they lost Romeo Doubs. They lost Dontavian Wicks. They're really relying on Matthew Golden and Christian Watson, and Watson gets hurt all the time too. But I think it would probably take that in order for them to completely fall apart, even with bad running, even with mediocre receivers, even with a defense that's not that good. I guess you could say if Micah Parsons look, it can happen. If there's a scenario, it would be if it was like the Darisaw thing, where Parsons came back from the ACL, but just wasn't the same. I think that defense is pretty bad outside of Micah Parsons. Just not really impressed with their D-line, not really impressed with their secondary. It's not a great defense. So yeah, I guess that's the best I can really do, because I think the Packers will be exactly what you said, which is they'll win 10 games, they'll make the wild card round, and then they will lose in some sort of insane fashion. Talk yourself into doing a preseason watch party. That is a good idea. Could we do, or should I stream during the preseason or something? Maybe I should do that. I could try it. Maybe that would be fun. Watch the game together and then do a post podcast somewhere. Yeah, maybe we can work that out. Well, maybe we could try something, because they're on the road, I think, for 2 out of the 3 preseason games. Norse Force definitely believe in Brandel and Fries. Was Brandel's first year, and Fries had the devastating knee problem. Yeah, they could both be better. And if Brandel is just what he was last year, it's good enough. Is that Brian's horror movies for life. Feel like Kwesi and Grigson are scapegoats for KOC's ineptitude. I agree with some of that sentence. I mean, I do think there's a scapegoat element of it for Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, and this is where I always try to sort of remind everyone that there was a lot of good football played during the Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah era, and I don't think that it was about whether they were able to build good rosters. It was that you reached a point as an organization where it was a crossroads. You're either going to go forward with these two and everyone's going to be under an insane amount of pressure, or you're going to move on and try a new leader for the next build of this team. And the Wilfs decided that based on what some of the other people in the front office and coaching staff said, that they thought that they needed a different leader for the organization. And I can see that. I mean, I did a ton of reporting on this with Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah and not exactly gelling with, the rest of the front office and kind of being the outsider and things like that. That's what it has more to do with, I think, than because they did put together good teams. They should have been much more competitive last year had they had the quarterback play. And also, here's the reality of the Minnesota Vikings is the reason we're sitting here today talking about a team that was 9-8, a team that, Kevin O'Connell got to, mediocrity, but certainly didn't get to the playoffs last year. And is he really the quarterback whisperer? Is really because of one catastrophic decision to let go Sam Darnold. Otherwise, they're a contending team last year because we've now learned that Darnold was going to continue to be a good quarterback. Does he play as well? Do they win the Super Bowl? I don't think so, but I think they would have been a 11 or 12 win football team with how strong they were. And they could have moved some money around to make signings. You certainly didn't need Allen and Hargrave to get that type of production. The way the defense played down the stretch, they were good, but other players could have produced that way. So the point being that the coach was majorly involved in quarterback decisions, and had he made the right ones, you can't tell me that if Kevin O'Connell did not stand on the table and tell the Wilfs and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah. And I believe all along that it was Kwesi's idea to go to the rookie quarterback contract. I think that was his plan. But you can't tell me that if Kevin O'Connell wasn't standing there on the table, screaming at the top of his lungs, Sam Darnold is my quarterback one. I need him to be my guy. I know he can win 4,300 yards, 35 touchdowns. We need him back. You can't tell me that they wouldn't have given Kevin O'Connell, after winning Coach of the Year with Sam Darnold, his quarterback. I'll never believe that. So are they scapegoats? Yes, they are. 12-16 trade, talk me into trading Jefferson for a top 5 pick and more in next year's draft. And the Vikings have to draft a quarterback next year. So the Jefferson thing did come up a little earlier, and it's a hard one for me. But if you were talking about a top 5 pick, it might be a little bit different, because in this scenario, okay, here's the scenario where I could talk you into it that I didn't really discuss earlier. Is if Justin Jefferson came to you, if you lose a lot this year, let's just say it goes horribly this year. You go 4-13, Kevin O'Connell is fired, and Justin Jefferson goes to the Wilfs and says, I love you guys, but I can't do this again. I am in my prime. I am the best receiver in the league. I need to play somewhere where I can catch the football. You have to trade me. Now, a top 5 team is probably going to be bad, so this is a little bit harder to happen because I'm sure he'd want to be traded to a good team, but we'll stay with it. That if he said, I will never sign an extension with you guys, I just think this organization is not good enough. I haven't won any playoff games, and I'm exhausted of this, and I'm sick of being the good soldier. You have to trade me. Then I think you're doing that, and you are drafting a quarterback with a top pick. I mean, that's a real scenario that could happen. In that case, if you're the Wilfs, if you're Nolan Teasley, you have no choice. You can't make a guy sign an extension. Again, it isn't Madden. And if he doesn't sign an extension, then your cap hits are going to be enormous, and you're going to have an unhappy player, and it doesn't do good for anybody if you're trying to rebuild. So that scenario actually is not the craziest thing ever. BM, talk me into where you ultimately think the number of games per team per season finally stops. 18, 20, 56. Yeah. I don't know how you could go more than 18 games, but I did think of a way, and I've thrown it out there before. And if anybody likes it, let me know, because I like it, is a split schedule between 2 parts of the year. And I think soccer does this. Some of you soccer nuts tell me if this is true. I think there are soccer leagues that do, there's 100 million soccer leagues in the world, but I think some of them do this, where imagine a world where you played the first, if it's 18, the first 9 games in one part of the calendar and then in the next 9 games in another part of the calendar. So if you started out like in, let's just say, I don't know, March, I guess, start out in March and went through March, April, May. Maybe you start out in May. And you go, okay, I'm trying to work this out. May, June, July, and then you have August off. And then, yeah, okay, how about that? You go May, June, July, and you play the first 9 weeks of the season through there. It's really maybe not, doesn't even take that long, but I'm working this out on the fly. So the first couple of months there, or maybe you come back for camp in May, and then June, July, you play your 9 games into the beginning of August. Then you're off for the rest of the month. You come back mid-September, play the rest of the schedule, and instead of having the Super Bowl in February, it's more like December. Okay, that's where your Super Bowl is. Then after that, as soon as the college season ends, like the day after, you do all the combine stuff. So guys don't have all a million, years to prepare for all that stuff. You get right into the combine, you get right into the meetings, everything else in January. You do the draft there in February, then have a mini camp. Everybody starts to get back in, what did I say, April? Split schedule. It's possible. Raj, listen to me. I think the maximum that you could possibly do is 18, I think, without like just destroying lives. 20, I think if Roger can push it to 20, he'll try. But I believe an 18 game schedule is going to happen. I think 17 is too long. I've always thought it was too long. 16 was fine. I remember looking at just the 16 game schedules over the years and how it might have been different if they had one more week and thinking, I don't know if I need this. And I really don't necessarily need the division games at the end when they might be useless. I want the division games to matter. I want them earlier in the season. But Raj carries on. So I'll go with the answer is it has to stop at 18. But maybe if they do my split schedule, it'll be 20. Dan talked me into Damon Claiborne being fantasy relevant this year. Yeah, let's say that the first week of the season, this happened last year, Aaron Jones pulls the hammy in the first week of the season. Claiborne's in, I think, at least to some extent, he's got to be in because, I see a role for Xavier Scott potentially, but Claiborne would have to be the next man up to really touch the football a lot to actually run with it. And you're not really asking Jordan Mason to carry the ball all the time. He can be a 20 carry a game guy, but I think you'd want Claiborne in there quite a bit. And if he ended up with 100 carries for, 450 yards, couple of catches, couple of touchdowns, if you're in a fantasy league that's really deep, then that might be a difference maker for you. In order for him to be a huge difference maker, like fantasy relevant across the world, that has to be a deep league. If you're talking about leagues that are 10 teams or something, you would need both running backs to be hurt and then Claiborne to be the starter, I think, it can happen. That guy, Frank, talked me into Addison and Jefferson both getting over 1,000 yards. Yeah, sure. That would be if Kyler Murray settles into the offense really well. And he is, because let's just say that they're not running the ball particularly well. So they're leaning into the pass. Let's say the defense isn't that great. Actually, this is how it could happen. If you look at, Kirk's yardage in 2022 and his attempts and stuff, it's pretty crazy because they had a very bad defense. So they were in games where you're just throwing the ball all the time, right? And if that were to happen where you're just throwing the ball left, right, and center all the time, and you're playing in these crazy shootouts and it's 34-31, then both of those guys could easily get over 1,000 yards. If Kyler Murray has to drop back to pass 600 times because you're in a lot of shootouts and those guys are healthy and he's locked into the offense, yeah, I don't even think it's that hard because that was kind of 2022 for sure, but even 2024, where they had to throw the ball a lot because they couldn't really run. Addison's close to 1,000 yards and Jefferson is over. I could see it. Scoldger's rise. Within 2 years, the Vikings will have entirely new QB core from QB1 to the practice squad. Is that a talk me into? I don't think that's that hard to talk you into it because if Kyler Murray doesn't work out to the point where they want to pay him, but they still don't believe in JJ McCarthy, Carson Wentz is in his mid 30s. Max Brosmer is an undrafted free agent. Yeah, it could be completely different. This is one of the reasons that I was thrown out there for Brendan Sorsby, because heck, man, you should take every shot. You have no idea. I mean, you're saying in 2 years, this could be in 1 year. They could have a completely different quarterback room in 2027. So that's why I was in favor of that, but the NFL was not in favor of that, as we learned. BM, you're going to watch the preseason game and you know it. Yes, you are. If you're here right now on June 24th in a live chat talking Vikings football, you will watch a preseason game. I know you will. Steven, which has better odds, Big Citrus winning Defensive Rookie of the Year or Purple Insider getting to 16,000 subscribers by camp? I hope so. If you're watching, subscribe. I hope that's not, I hope that's better odds than 20,000 to 1 or whatever it was with Big Citrus. So yes, please subscribe. Tell your friends. That would be great. Joker, talk me into Kyler Murray winning the Super Bowl with another team in 2027. Yeah, that's also not that hard, because let's say that Kyler is 8-9 and is just okay, and they decide, you know what? Because here's the thing about the Vikings with Kyler Murray, there's no middle ground. You either sign Kyler Murray or you don't. You sign to a fairly substantial contract or you don't. There's no franchise tag for you. Or, okay, here's a crazy scenario that actually could happen because you can't franchise tag him. Let's say Kyler's great. Let's say he's a totally new man and he wins 13 games. He is awesome. It is the Kyler Murray everybody dreamed of. And then another team says, we will give you more than the Vikings. And he says, you know what? I'm all about the mighty dollar. I am going to go become, a Houston Texan, my home state. How about that? The Texans move on from Stroud. Kyler says, I'm going home back to Texas, baby. That's where I've always wanted to play. My family's there. Sorry, Vikings. I love Minnesota, but not even about the dollars. It's not even about what the dollars represent, as Kirk said. It's about going back home to Texas. So he says, I'm going to take a cheap deal with the Texans because that's where I want to be. He goes back to Houston. Danielle Hunter gets 15 sacks. So does Will Anderson, and they win the Super Bowl. Could happen. Norris Force talked me into Kyler winning Offensive Player of the Year and winning the division. I'm going to look to see on FanDuel if he is even listed for Offensive Player of the Year. I would guess not. It's usually receivers, right? And running backs. Who is, just out of curiosity? Jahmyr Gibbs at plus 650 is the favorite to win Offensive Player of the Year on FanDuel. Bijan Robinson plus 850, Jamar Chase plus 1200, Puka Nacua at plus 1300, Jackson Smith-Njigba and Justin Jefferson after that, and then Christian McCaffrey. So mostly, yeah, I guess Offensive Player of the Year is real. I guess what you'd have to be asking is MVP, because Offensive Player of the Year is now become essentially the best non-quarterback, which I like. I've always wanted that. Okay, Kyler actually does have MVP odds. Kyler's MVP odds are plus 7,000. It's a little bit behind. It's ahead of Cam Ward. It's a little bit behind Jahmyr Gibbs, Jackson Dart. So, ballpark of Mayfield, CJ Stroud, Bo Nix. Probably fair. We don't even know for sure that he's a starting quarterback yet. So I guess I'd be talking you into him as the MVP. If he's the MVP, then he has thrown for 4,300 yards. He has run for 700. They've won 13 games. And all the NFL could talk about is the Minnesota Vikings, Kyler Murray, KOC's Coach of the Year. I mean, we almost saw the same scenario. I mean, we saw the Coach of the Year thing. Darnold was in the MVP conversation going into Week 18. And had he beat the Lions and thrown for 400 yards, he might have won it. Because he would have had that island game and so much narrative. So it's not, it's crazy, but it's not that crazy. Steven, Mr. Mankato favorite after OTAs, Dylan Bell or Damon Claiborne. Yeah, I think both of them, when you consider the position that they play, both of them are right at the top after that. And also I'll throw out Charles Demings, that I've been banging that drum. I will continue to bang that drum, that I'm very, very interested to see him. You get a couple of picks in preseason games, run back a few, run back one for a touchdown or something. You could be Mr. Mankato. But I would say the skill players definitely more. Jared, you haven't watched a preseason game. Why not, man? Well, they are pretty rough these days, but when we talk about the back end of the roster, it can be pretty dreadful though in the second half. You miss out on terrific quarterback performances. Hey, Dan, look up that game, Colts and Cardinals. That's the one I've been watching. I actually don't know how it turns out. So I love to find old games that I don't actually know what happens. That's one of my favorite things. So I want to show you guys something that I've been messing around with. It's kind of fun. And before we wrap up for the night, you guys have been great. This is called buildaplayer.com. And people have been built now that you can use these AI tools and stuff to build these websites. Like people have been building these fun, like ridiculous games. And there was one that Chris Trapasso built that was like a draft grade thing. So what you do here is you spin a wheel. So we'll go into it. You spin this wheel and it gives you a quarterback that you randomly land on, and you have to pick a skill for that quarterback. But the way it works is, like, if you've picked a skill already, you can't pick the next one. So for example, if I spun the wheel and got Nick Mullins and decided to take his legs because I just didn't want to take anything else, then I got Lamar Jackson. It wouldn't give me a very good, like, I couldn't use his legs. So do you know what I'm saying? Like, you have to spin the wheel, use a skill set for a quarterback that it randomly lands on, and then spin it again, pick another skill set, and you try to build the perfect quarterback, and then it gives you an overall grade. And I'm hoping that you guys can see enough of this. Let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger here so you can see the whole thing. I'll make it a little bit bigger. Okay. Let's see. I think you can. Yeah. Okay. So you can see the overall grade now. So you see how it works? Like, it's got the randomizer there, and then it's going to give me like the grade up on the right side. So I'm going to spin the wheel and look at skill sets and try to build the perfect quarterback through random spinning. Okay. So here is our first spin of the wheel, and I have been given Will Levis. Okay. So it's got grades for all of Will Levis's skills. It's got arms, legs, build, processing, leadership, vision, accuracy, touch, playmaking, and it gives you all of those things. So arm, I assume, is arm strength, which I think if we go with Will Levis's arm strength, he is an A- arm strength. He can throw the heck out of the ball. He just can't do anything else. So that's fine. All right. Now our next spin. So you see how the game works, where now we have to pick a skill for the next guy. All right. We've got Brock Purdy. So let's look over Brock Purdy's skills, and we're trying to get the best overall grade of our quarterback. So, play along at home if you want. Let's see. The processing of Brock Purdy would make sense. The vision of Brock Purdy, playmaking and creativity, pocket presence. There's a lot of things to like about Brock Purdy, but I think if you could put Will Levis's arm with Brock Purdy's processing, you would be in pretty darn good shape. And you can see that it's building our little quarterback here. So let's spin again. Our next skill set is Mason Rudolph. Oh gosh. What can we get from Mason Rudolph? He is basically C's across the board. What skill set can we get? And it does give you a respin if you want. I don't know if I want to use it yet. Should we just go with legs? Because I love how it gives it a bad leadership grade. Maybe we should just go with legs because we don't necessarily need great speed. Or should we use our respin here? He just gives nothing. Let's go respin. I think you get one respin. Aaron Rodgers. Okay. I think vision for Aaron Rodgers is good, but how about accuracy, pocket presence? Do we go accuracy? I think we should go accuracy for Aaron Rodgers. That would make a lot of sense. One of the most accurate quarterbacks of all time. We'll spin again. Now we have no respins, so we have to pick. We've got Jordan Love. He should have probably better pocket presence than B+. Vision, 6'5", is an A-. We could go pocket presence, and then I'll read out the entire, like the whole quarterback when we get to the end. But let's go Jordan Love's vision. We'll go with. So far we have Will Levis's arm, Brock Purdy's processing, Jordan Love's vision, and Aaron Rodgers' accuracy. So far. Our next spin gives us Shedeur Sanders. Okay, what do we do with this? Shedeur Sanders' legs. I think it's pretty healthy to give him a B- for his legs. Pocket presence is an F. Playmaking and creativity is a B-. Should we go with that, or should we go build? I think build doesn't really matter that much. So let's go Shedeur Sanders build. It's fine if our quarterback is undersized. That's not going to hurt us too much. A lot of good undersized quarterbacks. Next one is, I don't even know who this person is. Who the heck is Baron Morton? I have never heard of this person. Oh my gosh, this is a bad break here. I don't even know who Baron Martin is. Morton. I've never even heard of this person. Is he on the team right now? Where did this guy cut? Are they sure they've got a punter here? Okay, well, let's take Baron Morton. I'm going to have to Google, who the heck is Baron Morton? Who the heck is this guy? Baron Morton. Let's look at his wiki. From Lubbock, Texas. He went to Texas Tech, was a 7th round draft pick. I have never heard of this person. He played, Texas Tech. Okay, all right, now I know him. Now I know him. Okay, Texas Tech quarterback. Actually had good numbers. This game doesn't like him very much. Let's go with, we don't need the most speed out of Baron Morton, so let's go with him. We're down to an 84 overall because of that bad spin. And now we're going to get Garrett Nussmeier. Oh my gosh. Not helping me at all here. I guess we'll go with, we could still survive with bad leadership. So we're going to go Nussmeier's average leadership. We need some skills here. We got Joe Milton, and we couldn't use Joe Milton's arm. Let's go with Joe Milton's pocket presence and Philadelphia Andy Dalton's pocket presence. Joe Milton's playmaking. So we built an 80 overall quarterback, and I feel like I got some really bad breaks here. Yeah, you're right. You're right, Joker. I should have used. I thought I would do better than. Let me see. Can I move this over a little bit so you guys see the grades? Jeez, there you go. What a bad break. So our quarterback is rated 80 overall, and it allows you to simulate the season. Okay, so here's the rundown. We have Will Levis's arm, Baron Morton's legs, Shadur Sanders' build, Brock Purdy's processing, Garrett Nussmeier's leadership, Jordan Love's vision, Joe Milton's playmaking, Aaron Rodgers' accuracy, and Andy Dalton's pocket presence. I still think I should be good because Aaron Rodgers is throwing the ball with his accuracy and Will Levis's arm. Like, that should be really good. So let's simulate the season. Oh, wait, you have to simulate. You can is this with like my quarterback or is this just random? Oh, okay. I don't even know what's going on. Oh, if he was the Jet. Okay. It gives you a random team. So if my quarterback was the Jets quarterback, here's how our team would do. This is fun. This is the first time I've ever played this. We missed the playoffs. Come on. The Jets have some weapons. All right, so my creative quarterback only went 8-9. I didn't do very well. I didn't do very well, guys, but I thought that you would like that. All right, well, let me get to your last few talk me intos, and then we'll call it an evening. But this is so I'd love to know, tell me your results or email me your results or something, how you did on the game. Jonathan Harrison showed me that. It was really funny. Talk me into the Vikings winning the Super Bowl. It would have to go like this. So let's say Kyler obviously works out really well, or JJ. Your quarterback plays great. Your defense is elite. Your schedule is very favorable. You have the NFC South. They all stink. The Dolphins are bad. The Jets are bad. Detroit falls off a little. Jordan Love gets hurt and Caleb Williams regresses and you win 12 games. And the next best team in the division is 10, 8, and 6. And you go into the playoffs. You get a home playoff game and you win that game. But maybe part of this would be that early in the season, you recognize like things are going really well for you and not as great for someone else. And in the NFC North. So what you do is you make two major trades. You get another pass rusher, maybe interior, maybe edge rusher, and you get a running back. You make big moves at the trade deadline. Hey, we're all in. This is going to work. And then you get your home playoff game and you win that home playoff game. And then you get a favorable matchup in the divisional round where it's either a team that you just match up super well with, doesn't have a great offensive line, doesn't have an experienced quarterback, and then you win that game. And then in the NFC Championship, the other team's quarterback hurts his arm and you go to the Super Bowl. It can happen. You get 11 or 12 wins. It can happen. You can get there. It's all about matchups. You don't want to burn yourself out for preseason football. Okay. Johnny talked me into trading Jordan Addison this offseason for a second round draft pick. Well, that would be in the case that they were really just not happy with Jordan Addison in general. If they felt like Jordan Addison had learned no lessons from what happened before and they thought we are absolutely under no circumstances paying Jordan Addison, and we love Juwan Jennings, and we love Ty Felton, Dylan Bell, Miles Price. The depth is really great. So we are super, super impressed with it. So let's just pull the trigger, move on from Jordan Addison. Nolan Teasley, you're going to draft us into the future. I think that would be the way to do it. It's really hard to talk you into it right now, but that would probably be the way you do it, is if they just were so enamored with their depth. But also, if Jordan Addison's representation told them we will never sign here because he wants to be a wide receiver 1, so you should take the best offer now and then start thinking about the future. I still think that's going to be a thing for later to be addressed, but that would be the way you'd do it. That's the best I could do. Banished to the Jets. I know. What quarterback? What the heck quarterback was going to succeed with the Jets anyway? Well, I could do that. I could do that all night. Try to build quarterbacks. But that was fun. I didn't even know about the simulate the season part. I had just done the first part one time. I was like, this is cool. I want to show everybody. So we'll do that again, probably into the future. But that was really fun. Great chat, everybody. This is going to be my last live show of the week because I'm not going to be around for the rest of the weekend, but that doesn't mean the content is going to end. I've got a conversation with a sports psychologist about quarterbacks, which is really cool. And I'm going to bring you that on the YouTube page. Also, this is something to really look forward to. Brian Murphy is doing a sit-down series for Purple Insider with members of The Beat. So Kevin Seifert, Alec Lewis, that goes beyond talking Vikings, really goes into their careers and journalism and stuff like that, covering the NFL. So that we're going to kick off that series this weekend as well. And I will also continue to answer some fan questions, maybe from on the road, because I just can't help myself. And so there's going to be a lot of stuff still coming. And then next week, we'll be right back to the same usual schedule, probably Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. We'll have guests and we roll along into the off season. So thanks everybody for playing along. It was a really fun chat, and we'll definitely see you again very soon. Football.